Chapter 2340. The fiends of White Bone Temple turned towards the voice. Who would dare to stand out and say such words to them in this cave at this moment? When the fiends of White Bone Temple looked at Su Zimo, they were slightly stunned. Everyone's attention was almost entirely on the two fairies. Therefore, no one noticed this seemingly frail green-robed cultivator from the start. At that moment, Su Zimo suddenly stood out with a torrential killing intent, and said such domineering words. The fiends of White Bone Temple frowned slightly, unsure of Su Zimo's background for a moment. They could not detect the other party's cultivation realm in the Avicii Hell. The fiends of White Bone Temple did not know Su Zimo's cultivation realm as well. However, since Su Zimo was acquainted with the two fairies, he must be a perfected immortal expert as well. Madame Jadebone chuckled. "Little brother, don't be angry. Let go." Su Zimo arrived beside the two fairies and interrupted Madame Jadebone. He glared at her and the perverted bone demon coldly and spat out two words. The perverted bone demon narrowed his eyes slightly and did not get angry immediately. He continued gripping Yunju's hands and asked with raised brows, "What's your cultivation realm? How dare you speak to us like that?" He was intimidated by Su Zimo's aura and felt uncertain for a moment. Hence he wanted to probe further. "Fellow Taoist, don't worry. He's only a level 2 heavenly immortal." Not far away, Xie Tianhong saw this scene and immediately understood what the demons were thinking. He hurriedly stood up and said, "The fiends of White Bone Temple opened their mouths slightly with strange expressions. Ha 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 ha." Immediately after, the fiends burst into laughter and looked at Su Zimo with mocking and mockery, as though they were looking at an idiot. "I was wondering who he was. So he's just an ant." The perverted bone demon reared his head in laughter and cursed. "You're just a dog*T low-level heavenly immortal. There's no place for you to speak here. Get lost. Die." Suddenly, Su Zimo spoke a single word. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already arrived in front of the bone demon. A bronze square cauldron flew out from between his eyebrows. He casually grabbed the prison-suppressing cauldron and smashed it down towards the bone demon. "How dare you show off in front of me, a piece of scrap metal?" The perverted bone demon was not afraid at all. Not to mention heaven-grade magic treasures. Even the psychic magic treasures, used by true immortals, wouldn't be able to unleash much power in the Avicii Hell. Lustful bone demon grabbed Yunju's wrist with one hand and used the other to attack the prison-suppressing cauldron. Puff! The bone demon's fist smashed into the suppressing hell cauldron and exploded into a bloody mist. His entire arm was smashed until its bones and tendons were broken, and flesh and blood were flying everywhere. Ha! Bone demon's expression changed greatly. He screamed and subconsciously retreated. Su Zimo stepped forward and did not give him any time to breathe. He raised the underworld cauldron and smashed it down on the bone demon's head. Puff! The huge cauldron landed, and the bone demon's head was smashed into smithereens. His primordial spirit was destroyed on the spot, and he died. There was only silence in the cave. Everyone was shocked and froze on the spot. True Immortal Mirror Moon and True Immortal Imperial Dragon exchanged glances. They could tell what the other party was thinking, and felt a sense of trepidation. They had not expected Su Zimo to have such a trump card. If Su Zimo had suddenly revealed such a move earlier on, there was a high chance that the two of them would have died on the spot if they were caught off guard. The 14 bone demons had all cultivated a portion of the White Bone Fiend Transformation Sutra. However, each of them cultivated a different portion, and the characteristics of their bodies and bones were different as well. The only similarity was that the 14 bone demons were body-tempering experts among the true fiends. However, no matter how strong their bones and bodies were, they could not withstand the power of the prison-suppressing cauldron. It was too fast. The fiends of White Bone Temple had no intention of attacking at all. Initially, they were waiting to watch a show. However, they did not expect the bone demon to die tragically on the spot. The others did not manage to save him in time. The fiends had not expected that a low-level heaven immortal would dare to attack them in such a situation. More than that, they did not expect the bone demon to be smashed to death in less than 2 rounds. With the death of the bone demon, Yunju was freed. Su Zimo pulled Yunju over and shielded her behind him. Yunju was rooted to the spot the entire time. It's over. Yunju quickly realized that Su Zimo was definitely dead after killing one of the 14 bone demons. He had made use of the prison-suppressing cauldron to kill the bone demon by surprise. However, as long as the other party reacted, Su Zimo would not be able to defend against the encirclement of the fiends of White Bone Temple, even with the help of the prison-suppressing cauldron. Su Zimo was decisive in killing. After killing the bone demon, he did not stop in his tracks, and took a huge stride forward to Emoqing's side. Raising the prison-suppressing cauldron, he smashed it towards Madame Jadebone. Be careful of that cauldron. Suddenly, the Lord of White Bone Temple stood up and said sternly with a dark glint in his deep eyes. In this place, most weapons would lose their powers. However, the bronze square cauldron in Su Zimo's hands had distinct edges and exuded an ancient aura. It was heavy and dense. It was clear that it was not affected by the Avicii hell. There was a high chance that the bronze square cauldron was an emperor weapon that might not be weaker than the bone saber in his hands. Even without the Lord of White Bone Temple's reminder, Madame Jadebone could sense how terrifying the prison-suppressing cauldron was. However, she was in no hurry. Moving her feet, she locked onto Emoqing's joints and spun her body, blocking Emoqing in front of her the entire time. You're still too inexperienced to kill me, Madame Jadebone chuckled. 7 bone demons had already rushed forward towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze was like a torch. Suddenly, he hollered and let out a dragon roar that contained a supreme might that enveloped down. Although the dragon roar secret skill did not make use of heaven and earth essence chi, and its might was reduced significantly, it still released an extremely strong energy fluctuation. The 7 bone demons shuddered and stopped in their tracks. Madame Jadebone was the closest to Su Zimo, and her mind buzzed from the shock as her vision turned dark. That momentary pause allowed Su Zimo to see an opening. The hell suppression cauldron descended. By the time Madame Jadebone returned to her senses, the hell suppression cauldron was above her head. Ah! Madame Jadebone shrieked, and could only retreat before she could protect Emoqing with her body. Snap! However, Madame Jadebone was still a step too late. Half of her shoulder was snapped by the hell suppression cauldron, and her entire arm fell off, turning her shoulder into a bloody mess. Ah! Madame Jadebone let out a tragic shriek. She had lost a lot of blood chi, and her face was aging at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, she turned into an old woman, with a yellow face filled with wrinkles. That was her appearance to begin with. However, she was able to maintain her youth by absorbing the pure young blood of the boy continuously. Now that she had lost a lot of blood chi, she could not stop her injuries and return to her original state. You destroyed me! Madame Jadebone shrieked, and her eyes were filled with killing intent as she grit her teeth. Bastard, I'm going to kill you and suck your blood dry. Su Zimo had already rescued Emoqing and shielded her behind him. When he heard Madame Jadebone's threat, he did not say anything and merely sneered. He raised the hell suppression cauldron once more and smashed it towards Madame Jadebone. Madame Jadebone's expression changed starkly, and she did not dare to take the hell suppression cauldron head-on. Right then, a figure appeared in front of Madame Jadebone. It's time to end this. The monastery master of White Bone descended and said indifferently. Chapter 2341. The master of White Bone Temple looked indifferent. He raised his hand slightly, raised his bone blade, and slashed at the prison-suppressing cauldron in front of him. Clang! The bone blade and the prison-suppressing cauldron collided, and there was a crisp sound. Su Zimo's body shook as he felt an unimaginable power surging through the prison-suppressing cauldron. He couldn't block it at all. After all, he was a peerless demon on the true demon ranking, and he cultivated the White Bone Demon Transformation scripture. His physique and bones were strong, and his strength was shocking. There was a difference of many small realms, and a large realm between them. Even the 11th stage Qinglian's true body couldn't make up for it. Dang! Dang! Su Zimo kept retreating. He felt his arms go numb and tremble slightly. Oh! The master of White Bone Temple raised his eyebrows in surprise. The fact that his slash did not kill Su Zimo right away was something that he had not expected. The master of White Bone Temple took a step forward and slashed again. Clang! Another slash landed on the prison-suppressing cauldron. The cauldron was fine, but it was trembling. If the 4 Saint Souls were still around, they might be able to help Su Zimo block some of the impact. Now the 4 Saint Souls were guiding Wu Dao's true body to this place. The prison-suppressing cauldron couldn't block the master of White Bone Temple's power at all. Su Zimo's palm was torn, and blood flowed out. The prison-suppressing cauldron also flew out of his hand and fell. The master of White Bone Temple waved his robe, and caught the prison-suppressing cauldron in his hand. He looked at it carefully, and ignored Su Zimo. He only took action for this bronze square cauldron. As for Su Zimo, he was just an ant in his eyes. Whether he lived or died, he would leave it to his subordinates. Drybone, can you tell what's so special about this cauldron? The master of White Bone Temple returned to his seat, and handed the prison-suppressing cauldron to Elder Drybone beside him. Elder Drybone was older, and he was more knowledgeable than the master of White Bone Temple. This? Elder Drybone narrowed his eyes, and looked at the prison-suppressing cauldron. After a while, his eyes lit up. What did you think? The master of Bone's Temple noticed Elder Drybone's expression and asked. Congratulations, Abby Dean. Elder Drybone had been expressionless the entire time, but now he was a bit excited. His breathing became a bit heavier as he said, if this old man is not mistaken, this cauldron might be the legendary lifeblood weapon of Emperor Seamless, the hell-suppressing cauldron. Hiss! When the words prison-suppressing cauldron were mentioned, the eyes of the Dean of White Bones lit up, and he took a deep breath. No wonder it has such strength, able to block the White Bone Devil Emperor's bone blade. The master of the White Bone Temple murmured. Elder Drybone stepped forward and said excitedly, Abby Head, if we can refine the subduing hell cauldron, perhaps we can find the key to leaving this place. Ha 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 ha. The master of the White Bone Monastery burst out laughing. Legend has it that the hell-suppressing cauldron is suppressed in the Avicii Hell. Who would have thought that this kid would be able to get his hands on it? Now that it has fallen into my hands, the heavens are really helping me. The temple master has obtained the inheritance of the White Bone Devil Monarch, and the divine weapon of the Limitless Monarch. It's only a matter of time before he enters the Grotto Heaven, and unifies the Devil region. Elder Drybone said loudly. On the other side, the battle was coming to an end. Several great bone devils joined hands, and unleashed a flurry of attacks at Su Zimo. Bang! 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 Although Su Zimo's cultivation realm was not high, he relied on his grade 11 Qinglian true body, and his powerful melee combat strength, to last several rounds against the encirclement of several bone devils. However, without the hell-suppressing cauldron, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. After a few breaths, Su Zimo finally could not hold on any longer, and was severely injured. He fell beside the two fairies and coughed out mouthfuls of blood. Fellow Taoist Su, Yunju exclaimed softly and hurried forward. Mo Qing stood in front of Su Zimo as well, and tapped her glabella with 2 fingers. She glared coldly at the demons of the White Bone Temple and said resolutely, If you guys take another step forward, I'll kill myself here. Senior sister, don't. Su Zimo endured the pain and tried to stop her. Yunju tried to dissuade her as well. Sister Mo Qing, don't be rash. Mo Qing remained silent and glared at the demons of the White Bone Temple coldly. She exerted force with her fingertips, and pierced her glabella with a resolute expression. The bone devils frowned, and instinctively glanced at the master of the White Bone Temple. Humph! The master of the White Bone Temple laughed coldly with a mocking expression. Fairy Mo Qing, what does your life have to do with me? Are you trying to threaten me with your life? How naive! Mo Qing said. If I die, you'll never be able to obtain the succession of the deity, ghost, immortal, and demon diagram. So what? The master of the White Bone Temple asked in return. Hee ha 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 ha. The master of the White Bone Temple was in a great mood after obtaining the hell-suppressing cauldron. His laughter grew louder and echoed within the cave without restraint. You people of the immortal realm always like to think too highly of yourselves. The master of the White Bone Temple glanced at Mo Qing and Yunju in disdain. Mo Qing, what painting immortal? Why are you pretending to be pure in front of me? You're nothing but a slut. What did you say? Mo Qing's face turned extremely pale, and her voice trembled when she heard this. She was known as the painting immortal since she started cultivating. No matter where she went, she was respected and admired by countless cultivators. No one had ever said such words to her before. The master of the White Bone Temple wore a smug look. He continued, I've heard of the name painting immortal, Mo Qing. I initially thought that you were some high and mighty immortal that could not be profaned. Later on, I heard that you hooked up with a disciple of the same sect, and had a great time doing it day and night. Ha 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 ha. You. Mo Qing was extremely furious. Her body trembled and her face turned pale. Meng Yao's words were completely different when they were spread to the demon region. At the very least, the people of the immortal realm cared about their reputation. Even if they talked about it, they would not go overboard. However, the cultivators of the demon region had no scruples. As a peerless demon, what could the master of the White Bone Temple not say? He wanted to attack Mo Qing's heart. The more vicious his words were, the more it would hurt Mo Qing. Ha ha ha. The devils of the White Bone Temple laughed evilly. Countless gazes unscrupulously scanned Mo Qing's body. So you're a slut, and you're still pretending to be reserved. People of the immortal realm just love to put on airs. Under these gazes, Mo Qing felt isolated and helpless. It was as if she was all alone, standing in front of countless demons. She felt lost and helpless. I didn't. You're spouting nonsense. Mo Qing shook her head repeatedly, and explained with a pale face. However, the more she explained, the more smug the master of the White Bone Temple was, and the more brazen the fiends laughed. Mo Qing looked around and saw extremely ugly faces one after another. As she listened to the filthy words being said, she felt a deep sense of helplessness and despair. Everyone's words could melt metal, and accumulation could destroy bones. Gradually, a crack appeared on Mo Qing's Dao heart. Right then, 4 divine lights flashed in the darkness of the cave, and entered the hell-suppressing cauldron in the hands of the master of the White Bone Temple in the blink of an eye. The master of the White Bone Temple was stunned for a moment, before he was delighted. He could clearly sense that the aura of the hell-suppressing cauldron had turned even more terrifying. When he saw that, Su Zimo laughed bitterly and stood up shakily, declaring loudly, Master of the White Bone Temple, your death is here. My death is here? The master of the White Bone Temple roared in laughter. In the Avicii hell, I'm the only god with the hell-suppressing cauldron. Anyone can kill me. I'm here to kill you. The 4 words sounded from the darkness on the other side. They were powerful and cold. Chapter 2342. A figure slowly walked out from the darkness. He was wearing a long purple robe, and his black hair was scattered. He wore a silver mask on his face, and only a pair of deep eyes could be seen. Wu Dao's true body had arrived. You are. The master of White Bone Temple sized up Wu Dao's true body, but could not see anything special. In the Avicii hell, only immortal king-level experts could pose a threat to him. The aura that Wu Dao's true body exuded was far from that of an immortal king. The feeling that the martial path true body gave him was that it was mysterious, not powerful. Moreover, in the Avicii hell, even immortal kings could not take out their grotto heavens, and their battle strength would be greatly reduced. They could only rely on their physical body. The master of White Bone Temple had 2 emperor weapons, 13 bone demons, 2 guardians and thousands of demons. Even an immortal king would have to die if the demons swarmed him. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that? The master of White Bone Temple sneered. Wu Dao ignored the dean of the Baigu Monastery. His gaze shifted and landed on Mo Qing, who was not far away. He frowned. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell that Mo Qing's Dao heart was unstable, and there were cracks in it. She had suffered a great blow. If she could not get rid of her inner demons, her cultivation realm would stop there. There are people in the world who slander you, bully you, humiliate you, laugh at you, look down on you, despise you, and hate you. You don't have to endure or defend yourself. Wu Dao's true body said slowly. His voice contained a type of Buddhist chant that could reach directly into one's heart. It was like a warm current that flowed through Mo Qing's Dao heart and comforted her gently. Mo Qing looked at Wu Dao's true body in a daze and asked instinctively, "What should I do?" "Just kill them," Wu Dao's true body said indifferently. "Ah," Mo Qing exclaimed softly. She lowered her head with a pained expression and murmured softly, I can't do it." Not to mention that she was not strong enough to fight against the demons of White Bone Temple. Even if she had the ability, it was impossible for her to start a massacre over such a small matter. She was from the immortal region, and she was also a painting immortal. She was in closed-door cultivation all year round, and she was completely engrossed in the Tao of painting. In the depths of her heart, she was extremely averse to the battles in the outside world. "It's all right," Wu Dao's true body said calmly. "I'll help you kill them." Mo Qing's heart trembled. She subconsciously raised her head to look at Wu Dao. Among the 14 bone demons, there were already people who could not stand it anymore. Bone Metamorphosis Demon's figure flashed, and he rushed toward Wu Dao's original body. He cursed, "Cowardly scoundrel, acting pretentious in front of me. Give me your life." The Bone Metamorphosis Demon was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Wu Dao's main body. Without any hesitation, it attacked with a killing move. The Bone Metamorphosis Demon extended 2 fingers and clawed at the eyes of Wu Dao's true body. Wu Dao was wearing a silver mask, revealing only a pair of eyes. Although the Bone Metamorphosis Demon did not know the background of Wu Dao's true body, no matter what level an expert was at, their eyes were their Achilles heel. Wu Dao's true body did not move at all. In fact, he did not even look at the Bone Metamorphosis Demon. When the Bone Metamorphosis Demon's fingers were about to make contact with the silver mask of Wu Dao's true body, Wu Dao's true body finally attacked. There were no superfluous movements, nor were there any martial skills. He simply raised his hand and sent a slap over. It was too fast. Although he attacked later, it arrived first. Everyone saw Wu Dao's true body raise his hand, and that slap had already landed on the Bone Metamorphosis Demon's face. Crack, crack, crack. Right in front of everyone, the Bone Metamorphosis Demon's head spun for more than 10 rounds before stopping and drooping on its shoulders. Thud. The Bone Metamorphosis Demon died on the spot. The Bone Metamorphosis Demon's eyes bulged and he was stunned. Even at his death, he did not know what had happened. The 14 bone demons were all true fiend experts. But now, a true fiend was killed with a single slap. The master of White Bone Monastery narrowed his eyes with a grim expression. This person was extremely strong. Demons, listen up. Attack together and kill him. The master of White Bone Monastery was extremely cautious. Even though he possessed 2 emperor weapons, he did not charge forward rashly to face Wu Dao's true body alone. Instead, he summoned the demons of White Bone Monastery to attack together. Very good. Wu Dao's true body looked at the thousands of demons that were charging over and nodded gently. Suddenly, 2 pitch-black flames burned in his eyes beneath the silver mask. The next moment, the aura of Wu Dao's true body changed drastically. Standing there motionlessly, he looked sinister and terrifying, as though he was an emissary from the depths of hell. Suddenly, the master of White Bone Monastery felt his heart skip a beat. Without hesitation, he stopped in his tracks and retreated. Sensing the master of White Bone Monastery's actions, Old Man Kugu reacted extremely quickly and did not charge forward with the demons. Swoosh! Right then, a ball of black flames appeared beneath the feet of Wu Dao's true body and spread rapidly in all directions. The demons of White Bone Monastery could not dodge in time and were engulfed by the black flames in the blink of an eye. The black flames did not feel scorching at all. Instead, they were chilling and could trigger the deepest pain of every cultivator. Hellfire! Ah! 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 Many fiend cultivators let out tragic cries as their facial features contorted. With menacing expressions, they tore at their own flesh repeatedly, as though they had gone mad. As though they could not feel pain, the fiend cultivators were riddled with wounds from their own tearing and blood gushed out. Some of them tore at large chunks of flesh, and even revealed their white bones without stopping. Every single one of them had black flames burning within their bodies, mouths, noses and eyes as they struggled and screamed in the sea of flames. It was not that they could not feel pain. However, compared to the pain brought about by the black flames on their bodies, the pain of their skin and bones was nothing. With Wu Dao's true body as the center, the black flames spread in all directions, forming a gigantic black lotus that trapped the thousands of white bone monastery cultivators within. None of them could escape. What's that? Old man Kugu was shocked, as though he had seen a ghost. Although he had escaped calamity and was not tainted by the black flames, he was scared out of his wits when he saw that. The various scenes in the Avicii hell, even when he was attacked by living beings of hell, were not as tragic as this scene before him. How is that possible? The master of Whitebone Monastery widened his eyes in disbelief and grit his teeth. One can't use their essence spirits or release divine powers or secret skills in the Avicii hell. How did he break the laws of the Avicii hell? The Avicii hell was a world of its own with laws condensed from the Tao techniques of the Emperor of Infinity. Even immortal kings and imperial lords would be restricted. Although Wu Dao's true body had entered the true martial realm, it was only equivalent to the true self-realm of immortals, Buddhas and fiends. He could not release divine powers or secret skills. However, there was a type of flame in the Avicii hell that could never be extinguished. That was the hellfire. The birth of the black flames was condensed from the pain of thousands of living beings. Because of the Avicii hell, it did not require heaven-earth yuan qi to begin with. Chapter 2343. Not to mention the master of Whitebone Temple and the others, even the two fairies' faces turned pale. Thousands of fiendish cultivators from Whitebone Temple swarmed forward with a monstrous aura. However, in the blink of an eye, they were trapped by the black fire lotus and suffered a fate worse than death. What kind of method was this? The purple-robed cultivator stood with his hands behind his back in the black flames. His silver mask was cold, and he exuded a sinister and terrifying aura. It was as if he was the god in charge of Avicii. Yunju could not help but ask, "Sister Emoqing, do you know this person?" As a book immortal, she was knowledgeable and knew many secrets of the heavenly world, and even the upper world. She knew and heard of many experts. However, she had never seen such a mysterious person. After Wu Dao's main body appeared, he said something to Emoqing directly. It was obvious that he wanted to comfort her, and even said that he would help kill the fiends of Whitebone Temple. Therefore, Yunju subconsciously thought that Wu Dao's main body and Emoqing knew each other, and that he came to save her because Emoqing was in trouble. Emoqing shook her head slightly and said blankly, "I don't know him." "You don't know him either?" Yunju was slightly stunned. After pondering for a while, she said, "Perhaps you can't recognize him because he's wearing a mask. If he takes off his mask, you might recognize him." "No." Emoqing shook her head and said, "Everyone has their own unique temperament. Even if he's wearing a mask, it can't be hidden. If I've seen him before, I'll definitely have an impression of him. Moreover, I've been in seclusion in the academy all year round and rarely go out to travel. None of the disciples of the academy know such shocking methods." Yunju was confused. If this person did not come for Emoqing, who did he come for? Could it be a coincidence? The silver mask on this person's face reminded her of a treasure. However, this treasure belonged to Emperor Bosun. Although this person was powerful, he was obviously not Emperor Bosun. Yunju was deep in thought. She connected all the information she had obtained during this period, and gradually formed a guess in her mind. "I see," Yunju murmured softly. Previously, there was news that someone from the demon territory had barged into Avicii and rescued Emperor Bosun. Later on, a moon-devouring heavenly wolf had escaped from Avicii. However, behind this news, many people had overlooked one thing. Other than the moon-devouring celestial wolf, there were other people from the infernal domain who had fallen into the Avicii hell. The purple-robed man before him should be one of them. Now that he'd obtained the Mask of Mara, it was very likely that he'd obtained one of Imperial Monarch Bosun's inheritances. That was why he'd been able to persist in the Avicii hell until now. Although Yunju did not manage to deduce the identity of Wu Dao's original body, she was partially correct. Wu Dao's original body had indeed come from the demon domain and had fallen into the Avicii hell. On the other side, Xie Tianhong and the other two sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw Wu Dao's methods, and their scalps went numb. Could this be an immortal king? Xie Tianhong could not help but ask. No. True immortal, Yulong said in a low voice. Although the power of these black flames is terrifying, the ripples of power they emit are far from reaching the immortal king level. Now that Wu Dao's original body had arrived, Su Zimo felt more at ease. When he heard Xie Tianhong and the other two's discussion, he glanced sideways and said calmly, "Let me give the three of you a piece of advice. It's best for you to escape now. If you're too late, the three of you will die here." Humph. Xie Tianhong suppressed the fear in his heart and sneered. Su Zimo, stop trying to scare us. This purple-robed exalted celestial is decisive in killing, but he only kills people from the demon domain. How could he kill innocent people? You Su Zimo better be careful. Ow! Su Zimo raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Xie Tianhong with a faint smile. Xie Tianhong said proudly, "The Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom is one of the three great celestial kingdoms in the divine firmament celestial realm. My father is one of the strongest immortal kings in the divine firmament celestial realm. When he was young, he traveled around and befriended many powerful people in the world. If this purple-robed exalted celestial knows my father, as the Duke of the Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom, I can ask this exalted celestial to kill you." Hee. Su Zimo chuckled and ignored Xie Tianhong. "You want us to leave with just a few words? How naive." Xie Tianhong sneered in his heart with a look of disdain. The three of them would not leave this place at all. There were living beings of hell everywhere outside. Leaving this place was tantamount to suicide. Xie Tianhong thought that Su Zimo was instigating them to leave in the chaos and send them to their deaths. The battle in the cave started suddenly and ended quickly as well. It was nearing the end. The hellfire was restricted by the rules of hell in the Avicii Great Hell. It would not kill the living beings inside directly. Instead, it would torture them endlessly. However, there were no rules outside the Avicii Great Hell. The hellfire was even more terrifying than the karmic fire of the Red Lotus. The demons of Whitebone Temple could not withstand the hellfire at all. In less than 10 breaths, all of them were burned to ashes, leaving behind a ground full of black ashes. Wu Dao's true body stepped on the ashes and walked towards the Master of Whitebone Temple. The Master of Whitebone Temple looked at Elder Dried Bone, who was not far away, without saying a word. Suddenly his eyes flickered. Elder Dried Bone had followed him for many years and understood. Kill. The Master of Whitebone Temple wielded a bone saber in his right hand and the hell suppression tripod in his left. With a deep roar, he charged towards Wu Dao's true body. He cultivated the Supreme Fiend technique, White Bone Fiend Transformation Sutra. His bones were indestructible and his physique was strong. With his powerful melee combat abilities, he was ranked 10th on the True Demon ranking. In the environment of the Avicii Great Hell, he could unleash his greatest advantage. Right now, he was in possession of 2 Emperor weapons and could sweep through all True Fiend experts. Of course, the Master of Whitebone Temple was also worried that something might happen. Therefore, he gestured to Elder Dried Bone to restrain Wu Dao's true body while he was fighting, so that he could use it to threaten Wu Dao's true body. Elder Dried Bone was expressionless and did not dare to raise his head to look at Wu Dao's true body, afraid that he would alert the other party. He did not dare to act rashly as well. The moment the Master of Whitebone Temple and Wu Dao's true body exchanged blows, he finally moved and charged towards Mo Qing with a murderous aura. As long as he could restrain Mo Qing, he would be able to gain the initiative. On the battlefield, the blood qi within the Master of Whitebone Temple surged like raging waves crashing against the shore. His blood qi surged, and a gigantic white bone phantom appeared behind him. The Master of Whitebone Temple did not hold back and released his bloodline phenomenon right away. Swash! Circulating his blood qi, the Master of Whitebone Temple raised his bone saber and slashed towards Wu Dao's true body. At the same time, the sinister white bone behind him did the same action. It was as though it was wielding a bone saber and slashed towards Wu Dao's true body with the same hand gesture. With the augmentation of the bloodline phenomenon, the power of that slash was even more terrifying. He seemed to have become one with the white bone phenomenon behind him, inseparable from one another. He was white bone and white bone was him. Both he and white bone released their menacing fiend avatars at the same time. At that moment, the profoundness of the white bone fiend transformation sutra flowed through his heart one after another. Instantly, all the Tao techniques that he had not comprehended previously were enlightened. In this life and death battle, he had comprehended a fiend technique and released the strongest slash ever since he started cultivating. The master of White Bone Temple was invigorated, and his aura surged instantly. Chapter 2344. Looking at the trajectory of the bone saber in the air, and sensing the sharpness of the saber, even the master of the White Bone Monastery felt a sense of amazement. Perfect. Impeccable. In fact, a thought flashed through his mind. Perhaps, that single slash was enough to kill this person, without even using the hell-suppressing tripod. Wu Dao's true body did not dodge, and his expression was unchanged beneath the silver mask. Instead, he reached out and grabbed the incoming bone saber barehanded. Wu Dao's true body did not dodge, not because he could not. Instead, he wanted to try and see how strong the true Wu Dao body that he created was now at the true martial realm. You must have a death wish. The master of Bone Monastery's eyes lit up, and his lips curled, when he saw Wu Dao's true body grabbing his bone saber barehanded. The bone saber in his hands was once an emperor weapon. Although its cultivation realm had fallen, its sharpness as an emperor weapon was still present. That slash was enough to slice the purple-robed cultivator before him into two. Poof! Blood splattered. The bone saber landed on the palm of Wu Dao's true body and tore through his flesh. However, it was stuck between his bones and could not advance any further. The smile on the master of Bone Monastery's face froze. No matter how he channeled his strength and channeled his bloodline phenomenon, the saber could not slice through. When the bone saber struck the bones of Wu Dao's true body, it was as though it was striking some sort of divine weapon. It was indestructible and could not be severed at all. You! The master of Bone Monastery's eyes were filled with disbelief. Is that all? Wu Dao's true body asked indifferently. It was not because he was arrogant that he dared to receive the master of Bone Monastery's bone saber barehanded. The master of Bone Monastery was only a perfected demon. Even if he possessed a true emperor weapon, he could not release the full power of the weapon. However, his true Wu Dao body was at lesser mastery, and his bones were imbued with Wu Dao's dermic powers. They were stronger than any divine spirit treasure. However, those dermic powers had yet to nourish his flesh. That was the reason why he was injured by the master of Bone Monastery's bone saber, and his flesh was sliced. This kind of injury was completely negligible to the physical body of the martial Dao true body. At that moment, the bone saber of the temple master of White Bones was grabbed by Wu Dao's true body. Not only was he unable to slash down, he could not even withdraw his hand. The palm of Wu Dao's true body was like an iron hoop, tightly gripping the bone saber. The master of White Bone Monastery released his bloodline phenomenon and released his full strength. However, the bone saber remained motionless in the palm of Wu Dao's true body. You're too weak. As Wu Dao spoke, he raised his hand, clenched his fist, and punched out. Whoosh! A simple movement, a simple punch, without any martial skill, without any probing, yet an incomparably tragic aura burst out, causing one to feel suffocated. The pressure from the surroundings caused the patriarch of the White Bones Monastery to feel as if his body was going to explode, causing his bones to tremble. He could not use words to describe the terror of this punch. He only knew that his saber just now was like a trick played by a 3-year-old against this punch. He only knew that he had never seen such a ferocious punch in his entire life of cultivation. Even his white skeleton rare phenomenon began to tremble and squeak under the pressure of the punch, as if it was going to collapse at any second. At the last moment, the master of White Bones Monastery growled, and blocked with the hell-suppressing cauldron. Clang! The fist of Wu Dao's true body struck the hell-suppressing cauldron heavily, and let out a long sound that resembled a bell from the depths of an ancient temple. The body of the hell-suppressing cauldron trembled continuously. Even with the protection of the hell-suppressing cauldron, the tremendous power surged into the body of the master of White Bones Monastery through the cauldron. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard from the arm of the master of White Bones Monastery that was holding the cauldron. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the flesh on his arm suddenly exploded, bursting into a cloud of scarlet blood mist. The white bone phenomenon that was initially behind the master of White Bones Monastery was destroyed by a single punch from Wu Dao's true body as well. The sinister phenomenon collapsed with a bang. Xie Tianhong and the other two widened their eyes in shock. It was way too ferocious. A single punch was enough to severely injure the master of White Bones, who was number 10 on the true demon ranking. Despite the hell-suppressing cauldron, the master of White Bones Monastery's arm was torn apart, and his bones were shattered. Drooping down weakly, the hell-suppressing cauldron fell as well. Wu Dao's true body grabbed the hell-suppressing cauldron in passing and sent it into his consciousness. The moment Wu Dao's true body broke free, the two true bodies communicated. Although the cultivation realm of Wu Dao's true body was far superior to Qinglian's true body, he did not have any divine weapons or dharma treasures with him. This time round, he was met with danger in the Avicii hell and could not fight back at all. Therefore, Su Zimo was prepared to leave the hell-suppressing cauldron with Wu Dao's true body. Another point was that Qinglian's true body's cultivation realm was limited and could not unleash the power of the hell-suppressing cauldron, nor could she truly control it. On the other hand, Wu Dao's true body's cultivation realm was higher. After entering the true martial realm, it was equivalent to the true self realm of the immortal Dao. If Wu Dao's true body's essence soul was used to refine the hell-suppressing cauldron, he might be able to completely control this emperor weapon. If he controlled the hell-suppressing cauldron, he might be able to control the Avicii hell. If the hell-suppressing cauldron was placed with Wu Dao's true body, it would be even more useful. It would also be extremely obvious to Wu Dao's true body. Even if the hell-suppressing cauldron was in the hands of Qinglian's true body, he had many scruples in the divine firmament immortal domain and could not use it casually. However, Wu Dao's true body did not have such worries. He was wearing the Imo Luo mask, so no one knew who he was. Now that Wu Dao's true body had entered the true martial realm, his battle strength had skyrocketed, and he could come and go freely. With the help of the hell-suppressing cauldron, even if he encountered a celestial king expert, he could escape unscathed. Wu Dao's true body put away the hell-suppressing cauldron and took a step forward. He reached out his hand and grabbed the head of the temple master of White Bones. The bone saber was still in the hands of Wu Dao's true body. The temple master of White Bones had no choice but to withdraw his hand and escape to avoid being chased by Wu Dao's true body. His reaction was very fast, but Wu Dao's true body was even faster. Just as the temple master of White Bones turned around, Wu Dao's true body's palm had already landed. Crack! Wu Dao's true body's palm grabbed the back of the temple master of White Bones' neck and squeezed it gently. The temple master of White Bones' neck instantly shattered. The exchange between the two of them seemed slow, but it actually happened in the blink of an eye. In almost 2 to 3 breaths, the temple master of White Bones was restrained by Wu Dao's true body. At that moment, Elder Kugu, who was charging towards Fairy Mo Qing, had just arrived in front of her. Elder Kugu's expression was fierce. Without a word, he reached out with his skinny hands and his blood chi surged. He was prepared to release his full strength to capture Mo Qing alive. Yun Zhu had yet to recover from her poison and could not attack. Su Zimo had just been severely injured and lost his combat strength. Old Man Witherbone was confident that he could suppress Mo Qing within 3 moves. However, when Elder Kugu attacked, Mo Qing did not resist or dodge. Mo Qing looked at him with a strange gaze. To be precise, Mo Qing's gaze passed over his body and landed behind him. Yunju was also looking behind Yifutian. She was surprised and shocked. Elder Kugu was puzzled. What was behind him that made painting Fairy Mo Qing forget to dodge and give up resisting? What are you trying to do? Right then, someone asked indifferently. The person who spoke was very close, right behind him. Elder Kugu seemed to be able to sense that person's breathing. Psst! Suddenly, Elder Kugu felt his hair stand on end and his body turn cold. Chapter 2345. The purple-robed cultivator with the silver mask had already arrived behind him. How could this be? Wasn't that person stopped by the temple master? A series of random thoughts flashed through Old Man Driedbone's mind. He watched as painting immortal Emoching was right in front of him, and was within reach. However, he did not dare to move at all. Old Man Driedbone turned around slowly and looked behind him. When he looked over, he saw an ice-cold silver mask. The eyes under the mask were deep and cold, without any emotion. Old Man Driedbone's heart skipped a beat. He shifted his gaze downwards. He saw that Wu Dao's true body was carrying a person, the Temple Master of White Bone. The Temple Master of White Bone, a peerless fiend ranked 10th on the True Demon ranking, was in a wretched state right now. His cloak was stained with blood, and one of his arms was crippled. His neck was crushed as well. Although the Temple Master of White Bone was not dead, his head drooped. In the hands of Wu Dao's true body, he could not resist at all, and was like a half-dead old dog. Old Man Driedbone's Adam's apple bobbed as he gulped. He tried his best to squeeze out a smile, and said with a trembling voice, "I exalted immortal. I'm already in my twilight years. I exalted immortal. Please spare my life and let me fend for myself in hell." Old Man Driedbone did not realize that his smile on his wrinkled old face was uglier than crying. Wu Dao's true body looked at him indifferently without saying anything. Suddenly, he waved his sleeves and struck Old Man Driedbone's body. Bang! Old Man Driedbone was sent flying by Wu Dao's true body. He turned into a black shadow and slammed heavily into the pitch-black stone wall at the side, causing a blood mist to splatter. Old Man Driedbone's body seemed to have been smashed into a painting as he was plastered against the stone wall and slid down slowly. By the time he landed on the ground, he had already turned into a pile of meat paste and was dead. In the cave, there were still a few Whitebone Temple members who stood beside Emoching and Yinju. They were not enveloped by the black fire lotuses and managed to escape the calamity. Before they could react, the Temple Master of Whitebone was suppressed by Wu Dao's true body, and Old Man Driedbone was smashed into meat paste. At this moment, the crowd of the Whitebone Monastery finally recovered from the shock. They let out screams and fled for their lives. In the eyes of the devils of Whitebone Temple, Wu Dao was simply a devil from the depths of hell. In front of this demon, they were no demons at all. None of the fiendish cultivators from Whitebone Monastery stayed behind to beg for mercy. What was the outcome of Elder Driedbone begging for mercy? This devil was decisive in killing. He wouldn't listen to their explanations, nor would he give them any chance. Therefore, these devil cultivators from Whitebone Monastery fled towards the outside of the cave. There were countless infernal realm creatures outside, and they were all dead without a doubt. But even if they had to face the creatures of hell, they still didn't want to face this devil. Right at this moment, True Immortal Mirror Moon and True Immortal Imperial Dragon, who had been watching the battle from the sidelines, exchanged glances. Suddenly, they rose to their feet and blocked the path of the demonic cultivators from Whitebone Monastery. Xie Tianhong's heart skipped a beat as he instantly understood the intentions of the two true immortals. The purple-robed exalted immortal was clearly targeting the devilish cultivators from the Whitebone Monastery. If they helped the purple-robed exalted immortal kill the remaining minions, it would mean that they were siding with the purple-robed exalted immortal. In fact, this wasn't a big deal. Even if they didn't do anything, the devilish cultivators from Whitebone Monastery wouldn't be able to escape. But at least this wouldn't arouse the purple-robed exalted immortal's disgust. This was also a show of goodwill to the purple-robed exalted immortal. If they could take this opportunity to join forces with the purple-robed exalted immortal, they might be able to find a chance of survival in the Avicii hell. With this thought in mind, Xie Tianhong's spirits were roused, and he also joined the battle. The remaining devil cultivators from Whitebone Monastery were only at the Heaven Immortal stage, so they couldn't withstand the attacks of the two true immortals. Moreover, they had just been given a fright, and their souls had left their bodies. In just a few breaths' time, they were all killed by Xie Tianhong and the others. Su Zimo chuckled upon seeing this. His eyes were filled with mockery. Wu Dao's main body carried the White Bone Monastery's leader and walked over to Emo Qing. What are you doing? Emo Qing lowered her head slightly to avoid the gaze of Wu Dao's main body. She knew that the person in front of her wouldn't hurt her. She had an indescribable sense of trust toward this person. However, for some reason, she panicked and her heart pounded when she made eye contact with this person. This person just insulted your reputation and ruined your Dao heart. Kill him with your own hands. Wu Dao's main body placed the White Bone Monastery's leader in front of Emo Qing. You. Emo Qing raised her head and hesitated. She had a lot of things to say, but she couldn't say a single word when she looked at Wu Dao's main body. As a matter of fact, the crack in her Dao heart had already healed. Emo Qing was originally in the darkness. When she looked around, she saw countless ugly and sinister faces. Just as she was feeling hopeless and gloomy, this person appeared. He was like a god descending upon the world, shining brightly. The purple-robed man stood there, and the hideous faces around him did not seem to dare to approach. Thereafter, this person released black flames and burned all the hideous faces clean. He chased away all the darkness and walked towards her with light. At that moment, the crack in Emo Qing's heart healed. Emo Qing lowered her head and felt a strange feeling in her heart. She had never felt this way before and could not describe it. She only felt that her cheeks were burning, and she could hear her own heartbeat. At the side, Yunju noticed Emo Qing's expression and understood. Yunju was happy for Emo Qing as well. She smiled and nudged Emo Qing gently, whispering, "He's talking to you." "Ah!" Emo Qing exclaimed softly and was jolted awake. She did not dare to look at the eyes of Wu Dao's main body, and merely stared at the half-dead White Bone Monastery's leader. "Demon, I'll send you to the afterlife." With that, Emo Qing extended her slender finger and tapped the glabella of the White Bone Monastery's leader. That tap shattered the essence spirit of the White Bone Monastery's leader. The leader of the White Bone Monastery was dead. Although Emo Qing was obsessed with the Tao of painting and did not have much experience in the world, she had experienced many battles and killed many people to be able to cultivate to the true immortal realm. His actions were clean and efficient, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. After killing the leader of the White Bone Monastery, Emo Qing still did not raise her head. She only said softly, "Thank you." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito. If one did not listen carefully, one would not be able to hear it. At that moment, the ice butterfly on Emo Qing's shoulder suddenly flew up and tried to circle around Wu Dao's main body. It wanted to go forward, but did not dare to approach. "Xiao Dai, come back quickly." Sensing this, Emo Qing was annoyed and hurriedly scolded. Emo Qing looked apologetic and hurriedly explained, "Xiao Dai is usually quite obedient and does not disturb others. Perhaps she was frightened in the Avicii hell, so she was a little reckless. Please don't take offense." Wu Dao's main body shook his head slightly and turned to walk towards Xie Tianhong and the other two. Chapter 2346. I'm Xie Tianhong of the Fiery Sun Celestial Kingdom, from the Divine Firmament Celestial Realm. Greetings, Exalted Celestial. When Xie Tianhong saw Wu Daozun walking over, he hurriedly went up to him and said with a smile, "These small fries from the demon realm have already been killed by us. It was just a small effort, haha." True deity Mirrormoon cupped her fists and praised, "Fellow cultivator, you've killed the master of White Bone Monastery. The White Bone Monastery will be destroyed. It's a blessing for the heavenly realm. Fellow cultivator, you're really something. This is the first time I've seen something like this." True deity Yulong sighed. "Back then, I was fortunate enough to attend the Nine Heavens Celestial Realm's grand event and witness the glory of the Exalted Celestial. But compared to you, I'm still inferior." Xie Tianhong and the other two stepped forward and praised him, showing their good intentions. The martial Dao body didn't say anything. The silver mask was cold and expressionless. Su Zimo, who was not far away, suddenly sneered. He looked at Xie Tianhong and the other two with a mocking gaze. "What are you laughing at?" Xie Tianhong glared at Su Zimo and said in a low voice, "This Exalted Celestial is here. Your rudeness is disrespectful to the Exalted Celestial." Xie Tianhong did not give him a chance to speak and directly accused him. Yinju and Imo Qing frowned secretly. Xie Tianhong was too cunning. He obviously wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. As Xie Tianhong spoke, he observed Wu Dao's real body. However, Wu Dao's real body was wearing a silver mask. His eyes were deep like an ancient well. Xie Tianhong could not tell what Wu Dao's real body was thinking. Xie Tianhong said tentatively, "Exalted Celestial, this person is disrespectful to you. As long as you give me permission, I'll kill him. The three of you are about to die. Don't you know it?" Su Zimo said with a mocking expression. "There's something that you might not know." At that point, he paused for a moment. For some reason, True Deity Mirror Moon and True Deity Yulong suddenly felt uneasy. It was as if Su Zimo's next words would bring disaster upon them. Su Zimo raised his hand and pointed at Wu Dao. He smiled and said, "He is here to help me." Xie Tianhong and the other two were stunned. Their expressions froze on their faces. The two fairies also opened their small mouths, dumbfounded. Yinju had thought of countless possibilities, but she had never thought that the purple-robed man would know Su Zimo. Because just now, there was a small detail in the battle. It was this purple-robed man who snatched the hell-suppressing cauldron from the master of Whitebone's monastery and claimed it as his own. In Yinju's opinion, if the two of them knew each other, why would the purple-robed man do such a thing? Something's wrong. True Immortal Imperial Dragon frowned, his expression uncertain. He also thought of the prison-suppressing cauldron. True Immortal Yulong shook his head. "Is this fellow Taoist here to help you? Absolutely impossible. You don't have to bluff here." Pa! Wu Dao's main body suddenly attacked, placing a palm on the top of True Immortal Yulong's head. It was way too fast. Even if True Immortal Yulong saw Wu Dao's main body attacking, he would not be able to defend against it, let alone the fact that he was unprepared. Suddenly, True Immortal Yulong's head was struck by a tremendous force, and his chest was slapped by Wu Dao's main body. His head exploded, and his essence spirit was destroyed, killing him on the spot. Xie Tianhong and True Immortal Mirror Moon stood at the side and shuddered in fear. True Immortal Yulong was dead just like that. It was as easy as crushing an ant in front of this purple-robed man. "See, I'm not bluffing." Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and shrugged. "Furthermore, I reminded you guys out of kindness to escape as soon as possible." Unfortunately, fellow Taoist, let me explain. True Immortal Mirror Moon took a deep breath and looked at Wu Dao's main body, as though she wanted to say something. Wu Dao's main body attacked once more. Once again, he slapped with a flip of his palm. This time around, True Immortal Mirror Moon was prepared and saw it clearly. He hurriedly raised his arms high above his head, wanting to block the attack of Wu Dao's main body and turn around to escape this place. However, when Wu Dao's main body's palm landed on his arms, he realized that he could not escape. Although it seemed like a simple palm strike, it was filled with a shocking power that could not be blocked at all. Crack! True Immortal Mirror Moon's arms were broken, but he could not block the palm of Wu Dao's main body. This scene was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The chariot rolled over, and no matter how the mantis waved his arms, he could not reverse the outcome of being crushed to death. Piak! The palm of Wu Dao's main body landed on the top of True Immortal Mirror Moon's head. True Immortal Mirror Moon's body shuddered, and his eyes dimmed. He fell limply to the ground dead. Two True Immortals were killed by two palm strikes from Wu Dao's main body. Xie Tianhong's legs trembled, and his face turned pale. However, he was the Duke of the Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom after all. He ruled over a territory, and had seen many storms. At this moment, he tried his best to calm down and think of a solution. "Fellow cultivator Su, please show mercy." Xie Tianhong squeezed out a smile and begged. "I was wrong this time. I was blinded and attacked you repeatedly. As long as you are willing to let me go this time, I can swear that I will not make things difficult for you in the future." Su Zimo looked indifferent and was unmoved. This Xie Tianhong had attacked him twice and tried to kill him. He would not be merciful. Xie Tianhong turned to look at Wu Dao's main body and said, "Upper Immortal, my father is the Celestial King of the Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom. As long as you are willing to spare my life, I can ask my father for any request." After pausing for a while, Xie Tianhong made up his mind and said with gritted teeth, "If you kill me with my father's means, you will not be able to survive in the Nine Clouds celestial realm." Xie Tianhong was ready to risk everything, and even threatened Su Zimo. "Okay, let him come to the demon city to find me," Wu Dao's main body said indifferently and waved his hand. Bang! Wu Dao's main body's sleeve hit Xie Tianhong and sent him flying. Xie Tianhong's body suddenly exploded in midair and turned into a cloud of blood mist. His body and soul were destroyed. Wu Dao's main body had attacked and would not give them any chance to escape. "Is he really here to help you?" Yunju turned to Su Zimo and asked softly. "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. In the upper realm, Wu Dao's main body was his biggest base and also his biggest secret. He could not casually reveal his identity. Wu Dao's main body was wearing the Imo Luo mask. Not only could it hide his appearance, but it could also block divine sense. Even his voice would change after going through the mask. Therefore, as long as Wu Dao's main body did not take off the mask, no one would know his identity. "Are you from the Demon City?" At this time, Imo Qing asked softly. "Yes." Wu Dao's main body was focused on the prison-suppressing cauldron in his knowledge sea. He did not look at Imo Qing, and just answered casually. Imo Qing thought, "The Demon City is not a big deal. There are also good people in the Demon City." You. Imo Qing looked at Wu Dao's main body and wanted to say something but stopped. Wu Dao's main body was immersed in the prison-suppressing cauldron, so he did not notice. After a while, Imo Qing took a deep breath, and as if she had gathered a lot of courage, she asked weakly, What is your name?" Wu Dao's main body was silent. After a long time he said, "Araki Takashi." Chapter 2347. Araki Takashi. Imo Qing repeated the name repeatedly in her heart. Hearing this name, Yunju fell into deep thought. She recalled the many ancient books she had read since she started cultivating. She wanted to find clues about Araki Takashi, but even after thinking about it for a long time, she still had no clue. She had never heard of Araki Takashi before. She hadn't even seen Araki Takashi's skills just now. Wu Dao's original body didn't say a word. He closed his eyes and immersed his mind in the prison-suppressing cauldron, sensing the changes within. The prison-suppressing cauldron was once an emperor weapon. Even if its cultivation level had dropped, the 4 saint souls within it had awakened. It was at least a spiritual treasure. Xinglian's original body was only a stage 2 heavenly immortal. Even if her primordial spirit was a stage 4 heavenly immortal, she couldn't truly refine the prison-suppressing cauldron. And Wu Dao's original body had reached the true martial realm. His primordial spirit had also reached the level of a true immortal. Therefore, when Wu Dao's primordial spirit refined the prison-suppressing cauldron in his mind, he gradually discovered many secrets. He was overjoyed. The prison-suppressing cauldron was the key to Avicii. Wu Dao's original body refined the prison-suppressing cauldron and gradually established a connection with it. Through the prison-suppressing cauldron, Wu Dao's original body could sense everything in Avicii. It was a wonderful feeling. Other than Avicii, everything in Avicii, including the creatures of hell, seemed to be reflected in Wu Dao's mind through the prison-suppressing cauldron. Wu Dao's original body, the prison-suppressing cauldron, and Avicii had established a close connection. The 16 small hells of Avicii, the situation in each of them, the environment, and the terrain, appeared clearly in Wu Dao's mind. At this moment, Wu Dao's original body understood. With the help of the prison-suppressing cauldron, he had gained initial control of Avicii and became its master. The Avicii hell was a world of its own. It was separated into 16 small hells, each of which was vast and boundless. However, with Wu Dao's original body standing here, he could use the prison-suppressing cauldron to spread his senses to every corner of the Avicii hell. As long as he wanted to, he could know everything that happened in the Avicii hell. In this place, there was nothing that could hide from his perception. One had to know that many powerhouses were buried in the Avicii hell, leaving behind countless treasures. And these treasures would all belong to Wu Dao's original body. Of course, these treasures might not be of the greatest help to Wu Dao's main body, but the inheritances left behind by the various experts in the Avicii Hell. Back then, the experts who were trapped in this place were unwilling to die. They would preserve their legacies in various forms, waiting for the fated ones. For example, Yu Daozi's legacy was left behind in the deities, ghosts, immortals and demons diagram. Some experts might have carved their legacies in the form of words. If he could smelt all these legacies, it would be of great help to Wu Dao's original body in continuing to deduce Wu Dao's dermic formulations. Nearly 2 epochs worth of civilizations were buried in the Avicii Hell. Controlling the Avicii Hell did not just mean that he would obtain the treasures here. It also meant that Wu Dao's original body would become the inheritor of the civilizations of these 2 epochs. It was very likely that Wu Dao's original body would create a brand new civilization through the civilizations of these 2 epochs, creating an epoch. On the other side, when Yin Zhu saw that Wu Dao's original body was silent, she turned to look at Su Zimo and asked secretly, "Are you very close to this Araki Takashi?" "Very close." Su Zimo nodded and thought to himself, "We're not just very close. We're the same person." Yin Zhu frowned slightly, feeling puzzled. The relationship between Su Zimo and this Araki Takashi gave her a strange feeling. The 2 of them were very familiar with each other. However, ever since Desolate Marshal appeared, the 2 of them had not said a single word or even exchanged glances. If the 2 of them were ordinary, why would Araki Takashi descend here and kill all the fiends of Whitebone Temple and Xie Tianhong, and the other 2 without a second word? "What's his background?" Yin Zhu asked. "Him," Su Zimo said deeply. "He used to be someone from the lower world as well. Later on, he ascended to the fiend territory and established Heaven Baron Sect. Right now, he's the patriarch of Heaven Baron Sect." Heaven Baron Sect? Yin Zhu shook her head gently. She had never heard of that strength before. The fiend territory was vast, and there were countless sects and factions of all sizes. There were countless mystic sects like Heaven Baron Sect. How could Yin Zhu have heard of them before? "What should we do now?" Yin Zhu asked again. Su Zimo's expression was relaxed as he pointed at Wu Dao's true body and said, "It's fine. He can send us out of here." After Wu Dao's true body gained control of the prison suppressing cauldron, the laws of Hell of Avicii no longer affected him. He could even use the prison suppressing cauldron to break through space in Hell of Avicii and quickly arrive at any location in Hell. Wu Dao's true body also sensed that there was an intersection between every 4 of the 16 small hells, which was the space node in Hell of Avicii. There were 4 such space nodes in Hell of Avicii, which corresponded to the 4 walls of the prison suppressing cauldron. As long as the power of the saint's soul on the wall of the prison suppressing cauldron was used, the space node could be broken, and the living beings in Hell could be teleported out. The cave they were in now was actually a space node. That was why no living beings of Hell could enter here. Without the prison suppressing cauldron, the power of an emperor could break through this space node. 1,000 years ago, Emperor Bosun broke through a space node and left. However, if the prison suppressing cauldron was suppressed in Hell of Avicii, even the power of an emperor would not be able to break through the 4 space nodes. The mind of Wu Dao's true body was still immersed in the prison suppressing cauldron, as his perception spread continuously to search for the whereabouts of the fretless fruit. Su Zimo had another important purpose for coming here: the fretless fruit. Wu Dao's true body exclaimed softly as his eyes lit up in joy. He spread his perception and saw an old friend of Tianhuang mainland in Hell of Avicii. However, right after, the face of Wu Dao's true body darkened, and a chilling killing intent spread from his body. Wu Dao's true body summoned the prison suppressing cauldron and knocked it gently against the void in front of him. The void trembled and split open instantly, revealing a dark and deep space tunnel that led to an unknown place. Wu Dao's true body entered in a flash. Su Zimo followed closely behind. He stood in front of the space tunnel and paused for a moment. If he left Mo Qing and Yin Zhu here, they might encounter danger. He might as well bring them along. "Senior sister, fellow Taoist Yin Zhu, follow me." Su Zimo turned back and said. Mo Qing did not hesitate or worry about where the space tunnel led to. She followed behind Wu Dao's true body and stepped into it. Yunju's poison had yet to heal, and her combat strength had not recovered. However, her movements were fine. She also stepped forward and entered the tunnel side by side with Su Zimo. Chapter 2348. Two monks stood in a corner of the Avicii hell. Their bodies were stained with blood, and they looked extremely wretched. Along the way, they had experienced countless dangers. In front was a middle-aged monk. He was tall and burly, his eyebrows were upturned, and his eyes were wide open like an angry Vajra. Behind the tall monk was a young monk. He looked much thinner and weaker. His eyebrows were lowered as he chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. The tall monk stared ahead, his eyes wide open, revealing a hint of passion and excitement. There was a figure sitting cross-legged there. It was unknown how long he had been there. The flesh and blood on his body still showed no signs of decay. His skin was ruddy, like a living person. However, there was no sign of life in this figure. Beside this figure there were a few fruits. Not far away, there was a broken ancient tree. Although its branches and leaves had withered, the trunk of the ancient tree was still intact. I finally found the inheritance of Patriarch Anan. Looking at this figure, the tall monk could not help but laugh. As long as I inherit Patriarch Anan's inheritance, I will have a chance to condense a grotto heaven, become an immortal king, and become the abbot of Poliwan Temple. The young monk did not respond. He was still chanting the Buddhist sutra. The tall monk took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to accept Patriarch Anan's inheritance. However, when he was 100 feet away from Patriarch Anan, he was met with an unimaginable repulsive force that prevented him from moving forward. A golden halo gradually appeared in Patriarch Anan's body and spread rapidly, forming a barrier with a radius of 100 feet that isolated the tall monk. Bang! 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 No matter how the tall monk crashed, he could not break this golden barrier. Patriarch Anan, why won't you let me in? The tall monk was furious and shouted, I'm Arhat Buchan of Poliwan Temple. Only I am qualified to receive your inheritance. The golden halo showed no signs of weakening. The young monk still lowered his head slightly and chanted the sutra. Stop chanting. The tall monk saw that Ananda's inheritance was within his reach, but he couldn't get it. He was irritated and couldn't help but yell. I'm an Arhat from Dwelling Temple. I've condensed the Arhat fruit of Arhat. Why is Patriarch Ananda stopping me? Senior brother Buchun, you've led over 10,000 monks from the Polylore Temple into the Avicii hell this time. But only the two of us are left. The young monk had a compassionate look on his face as he said, while you were running for your life, you let your fellow disciples fight against the creatures of hell while you hid in the back. Do you feel even the slightest bit of remorse? Humph. Arhat Buchun let out a cold snort and said slowly, you have the inheritance of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. You should know that if I don't go to hell, who will? Sacrificing them will allow Patriarch Anan's legacy to see the light of day again. This is a blessing for Dwelling Temple, and also their supreme merit. The young monk shook his head slightly and said, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva sacrificed himself to save all living beings. You, on the other hand, sacrificed others to achieve yourself. The difference of a single thought is the difference between Buddha and devil. Senior brother, you've already joined the devil. How can you gain the recognition of Patriarch Anan? Arhat Buchun's face darkened and he said coldly, you're just a puny earth immortal. How dare you lecture me? If it weren't for me protecting you along the way, you would have been torn to shreds by those creatures of hell. Senior brother Buchun, you must have other motives for protecting me, the young monk said flatly. Arhat Buchun raised an eyebrow, seemingly surprised. After a moment of silence, Arhat Buchun said, there's no harm in telling you the truth. I need you to hand over the cultivation method of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's golden body. What if I don't tell you? The young monk asked. Arhat Buchun smiled and said, I can't do anything to you in the Polylore Temple, but in the Avicii hell, there are only the two of us. No one will know how I torture you. At the very least, I can use the soul-searching technique on you. Although the soul-searching technique could search one's memories, there was a high chance of failure. Moreover, the inherited memories, such as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's golden body, would be protected. Even if one searched one's soul, it would be difficult to obtain it. The young monk's expression was calm. His eyes were clear, and there was no fear in them. He said calmly, "If I tell you the cultivation method of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's golden body, I'm afraid senior brother will kill me immediately." Arhat Buchen's eyes darkened. He had thought that this young monk was a simple-minded person who focused on Zen and prayed to Buddha all day long. He thought that this young monk would not know about schemes and schemes. He did not expect that this junior brother of his would actually see through his plans with a single sentence. Arhat Buchen was already frustrated that he could not get close to ancestral Master Ainen and obtain his inheritance. Now that the young monk was so calm in the face of his threat, he was furious. Arhat Buchen took a step forward and reached out his hand. He grabbed the young monk by the throat and lifted him up from the ground. He said coldly, "Junior brother, I don't have much patience. You'd better tell me the complete cultivation method. I can give you a quick death and spare you from torture." The young monk was choked by the throat and could not breathe. His face was flushed red. However, his gaze remained calm and clear. There was a hint of pity in his eyes as he looked at Arhat Buchen. Right then, a tear appeared in the void beside the two monks. A purple-robed cultivator with a silver mask strode out. His eyes were deep as he glared at Arhat Buchen coldly, exuding a chilling killing intent. Immediately after, Su Zimo, Emo Qing and Yin Zhu arrived through spatial teleportation as well. Ming Jun. When Su Zimo caught sight of the young monk, he was delighted and shouted. His two true bodies had ascended to the heavenly realm for thousands of years, but he had only met two old friends from Tianhuang mainland. The Thunder Emperor Feng Cantian was an expert of the primordial era. To be precise, Su Zimo had only met one old friend from Tianhuang mainland in this lifetime, Shura Yin Beichen. To think that he would meet Ming Jun in the Avicii Hell. "Who are you guys?" Arhat Buchen looked at Su Zimo and the others, and narrowed his eyes with a grim expression. However, he still gripped Ming Jun's throat, and used him as a shield. Swoosh! A gentle breeze blew. Arhat Buchen felt his vision blur. Before he could react, Wu Dao's true body was already standing in front of him, gripping his wrist and exerting strength. Snap! Arhat Buchen's wrist was crushed by Wu Dao's true body. Ah! Arhat Buchen shrieked tragically. However, his shriek stopped abruptly the moment it sounded. Wu Dao's true body crushed Arhat Buchen's wrist and strode forward, smashing Arhat Buchen's head with a single punch. His essence spirit was shattered and he was dead. Even Temple Master Bai Gu, who was number 10 on the True Demon ranking, could not withstand a single punch from Wu Dao's true body, let alone Arhat Buchen. Su Zimo hurried forward and supported Ming Jun. "Junior brother Ming Xian." Ming Jun looked at Su Zimo and called out with an innocent smile. His junior brother Ming Xian seemed to have brought the two of them back to the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. The two of them exchanged glances and smiled. After reuniting in the upper world after so many years, they were both elated and emotional. Chapter 2349. Back in Tianhuang mainland, Monk Daming had met Ming Jun before. Even with Monk Daming's Dao heart cultivation, he avoided Ming Jun's gaze instinctively after exchanging glances with him. He lamented, "The Vajra's glare is no match for the Bodhisattva." In terms of attainments in the Buddhist Dharma, even Monk Daming had to bow down to Ming Jun. It was clear how deep Ming Jun's attainments in the Buddhist Dharma were. It was only logical that Ming Jun could ascend to the Pure Lands. However, Su Zimo did not expect that Ming Jun would come to the Avicii Hell. "Patron, you are." Ming Jun looked at Wu Dao's true body. Ming Jun knew of the existence of Wu Dao's true body. However, he had never seen Wu Dao's true body wearing the Mara mask, and did not recognize him immediately. "He's Araki Takeshi." Su Zimo's back was facing the two fairies as he looked at Ming Jun and blinked. The two of them had lived at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 20 years, and interacted with each other day and night. Ming Jun nodded, and did not say anything else. Su Zimo pointed to Emo Qing and Yin Zhu. "I'm currently in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, and have joined Heaven and Earth Academy. This is my senior sister, Painting Immortal Emo Qing." This is calligraphy immortal Yunju. Greetings, fellow Taoists. Ming Zhen's gaze was clear. Even when he saw two peerless beauties like the two fairies, his gaze did not waver at all, as he merely cupped his fists and bowed. The two fairies looked at Ming Zhen with a hint of curiosity. They had never seen such a clear gaze from anyone before. Su Zimo asked, "How have you been after your ascension? What's your current cultivation realm? Why did you end up in the Avicii Hell?" Ming Zhen replied, "It's a long story. I managed to join multiple Revelations monastery to cultivate through a freak combination of factors, and am now a rank 9 Earth Immortal." Ming Zhen ascended slightly later than Su Zimo. Su Zimo had obtained many opportunities, and was only a rank 2 Heavenly Immortal right now. It was already extremely rare for Ming Zhen to be able to cultivate to a rank 9 Earth Immortal. Ming Zhen glanced at Arhut Buchan, who had just died, and said, "As for me, I was forced to stay in the Avicii Hell. I had no choice." Yunju pondered for a moment and said, "The Polylore Temple is one of the 4 great Buddhist temples of the Pure Land of Bliss's southern viewing continent. 1,000 years ago, a heavenly king of the Polylore Temple perished at the hands of imperial monarch Bo-sun. The patriarch of Poliwan Temple is Emperor Ananda. Ananda is a Sanskrit Taoist name, which translates to joy rejoicing. There are rumors that Emperor Ananda was once buried in the Avicii Hell." Ming Zhen nodded. He looked at the figure that was surrounded by a golden halo and said, "This is the body of Patriarch Anan." Su Zimo looked back and couldn't help but be shocked. No one knew how many years had passed since this Emperor Ananda's death. Unexpectedly, his body was still as good as before, not decaying at all. Wu Dao's main body recalled the scene when Imperial Emperor Bo-sun revealed his demonic form. A golden light appeared, and helped them fend off Imperial Emperor Bo-sun. Imperial Emperor Bo-sun called that golden light Ananda. Su Zimo smiled and said, "It's a blessing in disguise for you. If you didn't come to the Avicii Hell, I don't know when we would have the chance to meet again. Moreover, this Emperor Ananda should have already preserved his inheritance. Ming Zhen, this is your opportunity. Go and accept the inheritance." Ming Zhen shook his head slightly and said, "Buddhism saves all living beings from torment. Since everyone is here, we all have a chance to obtain the inheritance of Patriarch Ananda. We are not Buddhist monks. Can we pass through this golden barrier?" Yunju asked. Ming Zhen said, "This last barrier left by Patriarch Ananda doesn't depend on one's cultivation background. For example, senior brother Bu Chun came from Buddhism. Although he cultivated to become an arhat, his heart has already fallen into the demonic path and can't enter. To put it simply, the golden halo left behind by Emperor Ananda still depended on whether the aura of each person was similar to his or not. If one had a deep understanding of Buddhism, he could also enter." Ming Zhen stepped forward. As expected, the golden halo didn't stop him. His journey was extremely smooth. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo stepped forward to give it a try as well. The golden halo didn't stop him. When Su Zimo was in Tianhuang mainland, he already had a deep understanding of Buddhism. After ascending, he cultivated the forbidden secret manual of the Buddhist sects, the Prajna-Nirvana Sutra. Although he couldn't compare to Ming Zhen, he was far superior to most Buddhist cultivators. Ming Zhen successfully arrived before Emperor Ananda and sat down in a lotus position. As for Su Zimo, he was obstructed by a strong force and couldn't advance when he was 10 feet away from Emperor Ananda. When they saw that, the two fairies were also curious and stepped forward. However, the two fairies couldn't enter the golden halo no matter how they tried. Both of them came from the 9 Clouds immortal realm and knew nothing about Buddhism. Their auras were quite different from the Buddhist sects and were thus excluded. After a moment of silence, Wu Dao's true body suddenly stepped forward. Yunju shook her head gently. Although she didn't say anything, she had already made a judgment in her heart. There was no way Araki Takashi could enter. Araki Takashi came from the fiend world and was wearing the Mara mask. There was a high chance that he had already obtained the inheritance of Emperor Bo-sun. How could he be acknowledged by Emperor Ananda? True enough, Wu Dao's true body stepped forward and was blocked by the golden halo, unable to enter. Wu Dao's true body did not retreat. His eyes were deep and emotionless as his aura changed drastically. His body seemed to have turned into a bottomless black hole. Wu Dao's true body turned chaotic from head to toe. There were no immortals, Buddhas, or fiends. This was a completely different aura. The golden halo couldn't sense the origin of the aura either. Wu Dao's true body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mist as he strode in. In the blink of an eye, Wu Dao's true body arrived before Ananda as well. The two fairies were dumbfounded. What was going on with this Araki Takeshi? He was clearly from the fiend world, but he was acknowledged by Emperor Ananda? Right now there were two people in front of Emperor Ananda. One was Ming Zhen, and the other was Wu Dao's true body. Su Zimo's position was even further. Emperor Ananda's inheritance did not appear for a long time. It was as though the inheritance he left behind did not expect such a situation to occur. After a while, two golden lights burst forth from Emperor Ananda's glabella and entered the bodies of Ming Zhen and Wu Dao's true body respectively. This meant that Ming Zhen and Wu Dao's true body would inherit Emperor Ananda's inheritance at the same time. A sutra appeared in the mind of Wu Dao's true body, the Agama Sutra. It was as though a voice was describing the contents of the sutra in the mind of Wu Dao's true body, imparting the Tao and passing down the Buddhist Dharma. Ming Zhen listened with rapt attention. However, Wu Dao's true body did not take it to heart. Instead, he flipped through the contents of the Agama Sutra. He would not cultivate this Buddhist sutra. Instead, he would fuse this Buddhist sutra into Wu Dao's furnace and absorb the mysteries of the Tao within. On the other side, although Su Zimo did not obtain Emperor Ananda's inheritance, he was not disappointed. Firstly, this Agama Sutra was definitely not comparable to the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Secondly, it was enough for Wu Dao's true body to obtain the inheritance. Thirdly, he caught sight of the worryless fruit and a relatively complete worryless tree trunk not far away. Chapter 2350. Su Zimo stepped forward and placed the few worryless fruits and the broken worryless tree trunk into a storage bag for safekeeping. If she could absorb and refine such a thick tree trunk, the grade 11 Qinglian's true body would have a chance of reaching greater mastery, and her cultivation realm would advance by leaps and bounds as well. However, Su Zimo did not have such plans for the time being. Although the worryless tree trunk did not have any life aura and was in a dilapidated state, it was still mostly intact with its branches intact. Su Zimo had a bold idea. If he could revive this worryless tree, it would create even more value. Of course, the possibility of that was very low. If he could not succeed, Su Zimo could accept it. At that time, he could just absorb and refine the worryless tree trunk. Su Zimo walked and patrolled the vicinity. Suddenly, his gaze landed on the fingertip of Emperor Ananda and froze. Emperor Ananda's fingers were pinching a worryless flower. The worryless flower had long withered. However, when Su Zimo focused his gaze, he discovered that there seemed to be a vast and boundless world hidden within the worryless flower. Su Zimo looked at the worryless flower and could not help but be immersed in it. The world looked familiar. There were 9 mountains, 8 seas and 4 continents. At the edge of the world, there was a pitch-black mountain range that circled like a wheel. When Su Zimo saw the mountain range, the first thought that came to his mind was the Grand Taiwei Mountain. This world was the pure land of bliss. The Grand Taiwei Mountain was also known as the Great Vajrawheel Mountain. The mountain range was way too long and was almost endless. It surrounded the entire pure land of bliss and formed a clear border. Although Su Zimo passed by the mountain, he could not see its full appearance. Right now, Su Zimo's mind was immersed in the worryless flower, as though he was a bystander who arrived above the pure land of bliss and looked down. He could see the full appearance of the Great Vajrawheel Mountain. A mysterious feeling gradually reverberated in Su Zimo's mind. In the lower realm, he had once cultivated a type of seal called the Great Vajrawheel Seal. After immortal ascension, although this Dharma seal could be released using the chi of heaven and earth, its power was mediocre. Therefore Su Zimo had almost never used that dharmic seal. But at this moment, when he saw the Great Vajrawheel Mountain with his own eyes, he felt something in his heart. He gradually understood the deeper profundity and true essence of the Great Vajrawheel Seal. The existence of the Great Vajrawheel Mountain was the natural barrier of the pure land of bliss, indestructible. Whether it was the Vajrawheel Mountain or the Great Vajrawheel Mountain, it was the same. Even during the battle to kill Emperor Lord Bo Sun, more than 20 Emperor Lords attacked together, and even the carefree tree was shattered. However, they failed to shatter the Great Vajrawheel Mountain. Once the seal was released, it had to be indestructible and unshakable. At the same time, Su Zimo came to a realization. Emperor Ananda had hidden his Taoist techniques in the world of this Siraka flower and passed them down. The process of imparting techniques was rather mysterious and magical. Under normal circumstances, even if Su Zimo cultivated to the perfected immortal realm, he would not be able to see the full appearance of the Great Vajrawheel Mountain. That was because the territory of the pure land of bliss was way too vast. Even perfected immortals could not see the entire Great Vajrawheel Mountain. Therefore, Su Zimo did not have the chance to comprehend the essence of the Great Vajrawheel seal. However, Emperor Ananda had hidden the Great Vajrawheel Mountain and even the entire pure land of bliss within the Siraka flower. It was rather mysterious. Su Zimo looked at the Great Vajrawheel seal within the Siraka flower and conjured the Great Vajrawheel seal in his hands. He repeatedly tried to figure out the intent of being indestructible and unshakable, and was completely immersed in it, forgetting where he was. When the two fairies saw that, they were shocked. Initially, there were only 2 golden lights on Emperor Ananda's glabella that entered the bodies of Ming Zhen and Wu Dao's true body respectively. But now, the withered Siraka flower pinched by Emperor Ananda's fingertips actually split off a golden beam of light and entered Su Zimo's body. This is... Mo Qing had a confused expression. Yin Zhu said, "Fellow Taoist Su is truly incredible. He has also obtained the recognition of Emperor Ananda and is accepting the Tao technique inheritance. Furthermore, the Tao technique inheritance comes from that Siraka flower and seems to be different from that of Araki Takashi and Ming Zhen." After an unknown period of time, Su Zimo could already grasp the essence of the Great Vajrawheel seal and stopped comprehending. However, his consciousness did not leave the Siraka flower and continued to explore within. Before long, his gaze landed on the center of the pure land of bliss. There stood a majestic mountain peak that was majestic and exuded an incomparably heavy pressure that was suffocating. Mount Meru, the center of the pure land of bliss. The moment he caught sight of Mount Meru, Su Zimo knew that the great Mount Meru seal that he comprehended in the lower world was way too shallow. The great Mount Meru seal that he condensed in the past merely had the form and did not have the charm of this mountain. One could only comprehend the essence of the great Mount Meru seal after seeing this legendary sacred mountain of the Buddhist monasteries with their own eyes. If the essence of the Great Vajrawheel seal could be described as sturdy, if that was the case, the essence of the Great Mount Meru seal could be described as heavy. Heavy, majestic, and majestic. In the entire upper world, Mount Meru was the heaviest mountain peak. The Dermic seal in Su Zimo's hands changed, and he began to evolve the Great Mount Meru seal continuously as he comprehended the Tao technique left behind by Emperor Lord Ananda in the Siraka flower. As time passed by, Su Zimo gradually gained insights. He heaved a long sigh of relief, and his consciousness retreated from the Siraka flower. Right then, the Siraka flower in Emperor Lord Ananda's hands dissipated silently into dust that drifted in the air and disappeared with the wind. There's a saying in Buddhism that a flower is a world. To think that I would be fortunate enough to witness it today. Thank you for imparting your teachings, Senior. Su Zimo lamented internally and bowed deeply towards Emperor Lord Ananda. At the same time, the golden light between Emperor Lord Ananda, Ming Zhen and Wu Dao's true body gradually dimmed and eventually disappeared. Immediately after, Emperor Lord Ananda's body dissipated bit by bit right in front of the few of them and vanished into the void. The reason why Emperor Lord Ananda's body was preserved so well was entirely because of his Tao technique. Now that his imparting of the Tao was over, his body dissipated as well. Ming Zhen knelt before Emperor Lord Ananda and kowtowed 3 times respectfully. There was only a fiend subduing pestle left beneath Emperor Lord Ananda. Even after so many years, the fiend's subduing pestle still shone with a faint golden light. The word joy was imprinted on the fiend's subduing pestle. This was Emperor Lord Ananda's destiny weapon back then. Ananda was a Sanskrit Taoist name that meant joy and celebration. Mingjun looked towards Wu Dao's true body. Wu Dao's true body shook his head gently. Take it. I have no use for it. You've inherited Emperor Lord Ananda's Tao technique and Ksitigarbha's teachings. You're the only one who can unleash the true power of this emperor weapon. Chapter 2351. After receiving Emperor Ananda's inheritance, both Su Zimo and Mingjun were on the verge of a breakthrough. However, because there was no heaven-earth essence chi in the Avicii hell, their cultivation realms did not show any signs of loosening. If the two of them left this place and breathed in heaven-earth essence chi, they would break through immediately. More than 10,000 monks from multiple knowledge temple died here. If you're the only one who returns unscathed, I'm afraid there will be endless trouble. Wu Dao said, I have a faction in the demon territory. Why don't you follow me to the demon territory? There's an old friend of Tianhuang region there. All right. Mingjun nodded. As long as you're dedicated to Buddhism, you can cultivate in any demon territory or blessed lands. I came from the lower world. Although I was able to enter multiple knowledge temple after ascending to the pure lands, I don't have a sense of belonging. Mingjun did not say it explicitly, but Su Zimo already understood. Over the years, he had encountered countless injustice in the divine firmament immortal domain, because he came from the lower world. Even though he had entered Heaven and Earth Academy, many cultivators still secretly discussed his background. In the divine firmament immortal domain, he killed the executioner guards, obtained the first place on the earth roll, killed many prodigies, formed the 10th step of the Tao Heart Ladder, and made a name for himself. Even so, there were still people who targeted him, let alone the indifferent Mingjun. Thinking about how powerful the Thunder Emperor Feng Cantian was hundreds of thousands of years ago, but in the end, he ended up being imprisoned for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if he broke free, he was tortured and his body was severely injured. He could only leave the demon territory. After this matter, both Qinglian's true body and Wu Dao's true body prepared to leave the Avicii hell and return to Heaven and Earth Academy and demon territory respectively. However, the matter of the Avicii hell was a little strange. There were no cracks in the Avicii hell at all. Even immortal kings who entered the hell would die there. Where did this news come from? How did it spread in the heaven realm? Did someone deliberately spread it, or did they accidentally leak it? Out of caution, Su Zimo still decided to separate his two true bodies and leave Avicii at different times. Wu Dao came to Mo Qing's side and handed her the celestial, immortal and demon painting. This painting should be yours, right? Earlier on, he had suppressed the master of Whitebone Monastery and then studied the secrets of the prison-suppressing cauldron. Then, he had appeared to save Mingjun. In the end, he did not have time to return the painting to Mo Qing. Mo Qing hesitated for a moment before accepting it. Thank you, she said softly. Wu Dao's main body said, if there's nothing else, I'll send you off right now. Yunju frowned slightly and glanced at Su Zimo beside her. She was secretly worried for him. The suppressing hell cauldron had been taken away by Araki Takeshi, but he had never returned it. Yunju had seen this and kept it in her heart. But now, Su Zimo's expression was calm, and there was nothing unusual about it. It was as though he had forgotten about this matter completely. Now that they were about to leave, Su Zimo still had no intention of asking for it. Seeing that Wu Dao's main body had returned the celestial, immortal and demon painting to Mo Qing, Yunju felt that it was a suitable opportunity. At that thought, Yunju looked at Wu Dao's main body and smiled. Fellow Taoist Araki Takeshi, thank you for saving us this time. Wu Dao's main body nodded slightly and did not say anything. Yunju changed the topic. However, there's something I want to tell you. The bronze square cauldron you obtained from suppressing the master of Whitebone Monastery belongs to my friend. I believe that you definitely don't want to take it for yourself. Perhaps you have forgotten about it, so I took the liberty to remind you. If I offended you, I hope you can forgive me. No matter what, Araki Takashi had just saved them, and thus, Yunju was rather polite. Suzumo listened at the side, and was curious about what Yunju wanted to say to Wu Dao's main body. He did not expect that he would be dragged into the conversation. Suzumo coughed gently and said, It's fine. We're all on the same side. Ah. Yunju was stunned, and looked at Suzumo in confusion. Suzumo explained hurriedly, I'm very close to him. It's just a lousy cauldron. Let him have it for fun. It's fine. Lousy cauldron? Yunju was dumbfounded. The hell suppression cauldron was an emperor weapon, and might even be the key to controlling it. No matter how close they were, it was not appropriate for them to give such a treasure away casually, right? Suzumo thought for a moment and said, Well, he's just a little tough. However, he's actually very poor, and has no Dharma treasures to protect himself. It's fine to give him a cauldron. I still have some lousy stuff here, and I was worried that no one would give it to me. As he said that, Suzumo opened his storage bag and rummaged through it. He caught sight of an ancient bronze lamp in a corner. He rolled up the ancient bronze lamp with his sleeves, and took it out of his storage bag. He tossed it to Wu Dao's main body and said casually, Since you can't light this lousy lamp, it's yours too. The ancient bronze lamp was the soul lamp that Suzumo obtained from the emperor's tomb. The origin of the soul lamp was mysterious, and it could only be lit with a fire of spirit consciousness by absorbing souls as fuel. Back in the emperor's tomb, the fuel in the soul lamp was already depleted. Even though Suzumo had been carrying the soul lamp with him all these years, he had not discovered the origin of the soul lamp. The reason why he rolled up the soul lamp with his sleeves was because his essence, spirit, and soul were at risk of being absorbed by the soul lamp the moment he touched it. The soul lamp was definitely an extremely powerful treasure that even the hell-suppressing cauldron could not devour and refine. Back in the emperor's tomb, the flame of the soul lamp could even isolate the curse of the tomb. However, the soul lamp was with Qinglian's main body. It was a little dusty, and there was no chance to use it. Wu Dao's main body had already refined the hell-suppressing cauldron, and would return to the Avicii hell in the future. If the time was right, Wu Dao's main body wanted to explore the Avicii hell. With the soul lamp by his side, he would be more confident. Now that Yunju asked, Suzumo took the opportunity to take out the soul lamp and tossed it to Wu Dao's main body. When Wu Dao's main body saw the soul lamp flying over, he reached out and wanted to catch it. However, the moment his palm made contact with the soul lamp, his expression changed drastically. Wu Dao's main body could also sense the situation when Qinglian's main body touched the soul lamp for the first time in the emperor's tomb. Her martial soul was pulled by a powerful force, and was about to escape into the soul lamp. Once the martial soul entered the soul lamp, it would become the fuel of the soul lamp. Wu Dao's main body reacted extremely quickly. His martial soul flame burned, and he circulated the Devil Aversion Sutra, and activated the Mask of Emo Luo to isolate the connection between his essence spirit and the soul lamp. The suction force of the soul lamp weakened slightly. Wu Dao's main body withdrew his hand hurriedly and waved his sleeves, rolling up the soul lamp and putting it away in his storage bag. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. Outsiders naturally could not tell that Wu Dao's main body had just experienced a huge danger in that instant. Chapter 2352. Wu Dao's original body naturally knew about the characteristics of the soul lamp, since they were telepathically connected. He had reached out to touch it because he wanted to see if he could withstand the strange power of the soul lamp after entering the true martial realm and forging the true Wu Dao body. Unfortunately, Wu Dao's original body could not withstand it either. Wu Dao's original body did not intend to re-enter the Avicii Great Hell for the time being if he could not wield the soul lamp. After all, that was the core of the Avicii Great Hell. Even with the prison-suppressing cauldron, Wu Dao's original body was not confident. No one knew what secrets were hidden in the Avicii Great Hell. He would explore the 16 small hells first. If he could improve his cultivation and wield the soul lamp, it would not be too late to re-enter the Avicii Great Hell. Yunju saw Suzumo's attitude and did not say much. However, deep in her heart, She was still confused about the relationship between Suzimo and Araki Takeshi of the demon domain. Wu Dao's original body said, "My power is limited. Even if I can use the prison-suppressing cauldron to open a space node in the Avicii Great Hell, I can't teleport you too far away." This did not matter. As long as they could leave the Avicii Great Hell, there would be a teleportation formation nearby. Suzimo and the other two could be teleported back. Wu Dao's original body took out the prison-suppressing cauldron and opened a space node, revealing a tunnel that led out of hell. "Aren't you leaving with us?" Mo Qing was silent for a moment before she looked up at Wu Dao's original body and asked softly. Wu Dao's original body shook his head. He had the prison-suppressing cauldron with him. Even in the Avicii Great Hell, there was no danger. He was not in a hurry to leave. Ming Zhen was prepared to follow him to the demon domain and would not leave for the time being. Su Zimo and Yunju had already walked to the side of the space tunnel. Mo Qing was still standing motionlessly with her head lowered. No one knew what she was thinking. "Senior sister?" Su Zimo was confused and called out. Mo Qing stood there quietly, as if she hadn't heard anything. Su Zimo thought about it and gradually came to a realization. He said in a low voice, "Senior sister Mo Qing has been cultivating in seclusion in the academy all year round and is obsessed with the Tao of painting. I'm sure that the experiences of the past few days have had a great impact on her. She won't be able to recover for a while." "Of course not." Yunju rolled her eyes at Su Zimo and turned to Mo Qing, reminding her softly, "Sister Mo Qing, let's go." "Ah." Mo Qing Ru woke up from her dream and looked a little flustered. She raised her head and looked at Wu Dao's main body before quickly retracting her gaze and turning to Su Zimo's side. Yunju smiled and gently grabbed Mo Qing's little hand. She said to Wu Dao's main body, "Fellow Taoist Araki Takeshi, I can't thank you enough for saving me this time. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. We will meet again if fate wills it." "Yes." Wu Dao's main body nodded slightly. His expression couldn't be seen under the silver mask. He wasn't pretending to be cold. It was just that book immortal Yunju was too smart. If he said too much, he would inevitably reveal some flaws. "All right." Wu Dao's main body suddenly thought of something and said, "About the secret of the Avicii Hell and my matter. I hope that you two won't tell anyone." "I won't tell anyone," Mo Qing immediately said. "I can swear that I won't say a word." Yunju was stunned for a moment. Then, she swore that she wouldn't tell anyone. She didn't say anything immediately, because Araki Takeshi's words sounded a little strange to her. The three of them were standing together, and Araki Takeshi's words were directed at the three of them. However, Araki Takeshi only said fellow Taoists. Araki Takeshi's words were very natural. He excluded Su Zimo. Of course, it could be explained that the two of them had a deep friendship and trusted each other. However, Yunju vaguely felt that there seemed to be something else behind it. She didn't have too much time to think. She entered the space tunnel with Su Zimo and Mo Qing and left the Avicii Hell. Not long after, a crack appeared in the sky above the Shura temple. Su Zimo and the other two fell from it. Yunju's poison hadn't healed yet. Mo Qing hugged Yunju's slender waist and landed steadily. The Avicii Hell was gloomy and gloomy. The atmosphere was oppressive. They could encounter danger at any time and were in danger. After leaving the Avicii Hell, the three of them felt as if they could see the sun again. They were relieved of a heavy burden. Su Zimo took a deep breath. The endless chi of heaven and earth surged into his body, as if it was real. It was like sweet dew after a long drought. Qinghuiyan's real body crazily absorbed the chi of heaven and earth to nourish her flesh, bones, and primordial spirit. Su Zimo had been at the peak of level 2 celestial being for many years. Although he had a lot of cultivation resources, he still couldn't break through the bottleneck. In this trip to the hell, not only did he save Wu Dao's real body, but he also obtained the carefree fruit, the carefree tree trunk, and other treasures. He also obtained the inheritance of Emperor Ananda and comprehended 2 Buddhist seals. Everything came naturally. The endless chi of heaven and earth surged into his body and formed a torrent that broke through the barrier. Su Zimo's aura surged. After leaving the Avicii Hell, he made a breakthrough and stepped into level 3 of the heavenly origin realm. His primordial spirit had also reached the peak of level 5 of the heavenly origin realm. The fusion of the dragon phoenix and Qinglian's primordial spirits, and the cultivation of this taboo manual, made his primordial spirit 2 levels higher than his cultivation. Now, after cultivating the complete Prajna Nirvana Sutra, Su Zimo's primordial spirit had become more condensed. If he continued to cultivate, there was even hope for him to surpass his cultivation by 3 levels in the heavenly origin realm. After Su Zimo broke through, he spread out his divine sense and searched around. After a while, he withdrew his divine sense and was slightly disappointed. He didn't see any trace of Commandery Prince Yuanzhua. This time, it was only the great Jin celestial nation. Only the Mirror Moon Immortal entered the Avicii Hell, and Commandery Prince Yuanzhua didn't follow. That was why Su Zimo thought that Commandery Prince Yuanzhua might still be nearby. Now it seemed that Commandery Prince Yuanzhua might have sensed that something was wrong and had already escaped. Congratulations. Yunju smiled. Su Zimo also smiled. Looking at Yunju's feet, he asked, "How's your injury?" "It's fine now," Yunju said. "Once we return to the Zixian celestial nation and rest for a while, I'll be fine." After saying this, the two of them seemed to inadvertently meet each other's eyes. Yunju couldn't help but recall the scene in the Avicii Hell. At that time, Su Zimo had carried her on his back, and their bodies were almost stuck together. There were only a few layers of gauze between them. At that time, the situation was critical, and they were in hell. Although it was a little embarrassing, it was nothing. Thinking about it now, Yunju couldn't help but feel a little strange. Hee. At that moment, a strange laughter suddenly sounded. It was both near and far, erratic and with a hint of eeriness. After waiting for so long, I didn't expect that our opportunity would fall on these 3 juniors. Another voice said. The third voice sighed faintly. Although the price is a little high, no matter what, it's finally here. Chapter 2353. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Yunju's expression was grim as well. She had long suspected that there seemed to be a pair of invisible hands behind the scenes that were pushing for the deaths of so many cultivators. To think that the 3 of them would be targeted the moment they came out of the Avicii Hell. Furthermore, from the tone of those people, it was clear that they were hostile. Right then, 8 figures appeared out of thin air around the 3 of them and walked over slowly. In the blink of an eye, they arrived before them. All 8 of them wore monk robes and should have come from the Pure Lands. They were extremely old and looked lethargic. Emo Qing slapped her storage bag and summoned her destiny album. She flipped it open and was prepared to tear off the drawings at any moment. Without the restriction of her essence spirit after leaving the Avicii Hell, Emo Qing could release the combat strength of a perfected immortal. Emo Qing had poured all of her heart and soul into this picture album. Yunju once said that if Emo Qing was truly enraged and tore all the drawings on the album, the living beings within would be released, and it would be a terrifying army of living beings. Even if the remaining 3 fairies joined forces, they would have to avoid it. Junior, give up. Your methods are child's play before us. A monk spoke up and said indifferently. At the same time, the void behind the monk collapsed and a grotto heaven appeared. It shone with a Buddhist light and Sanskrit chants could be heard with a terrifying aura. A heavenly king of the Buddhist sects. The 2 fairies' expressions changed starkly. A heavenly king of the Buddhist sects was equivalent to an immortal king. Only immortal kings could release grotto heavens. The drawings in Emo Qing's hands fluttered one after another, as though they could sense the powerful aura of the grotto heaven behind the heavenly king, and were trembling slightly. Boom! The void behind another monk collapsed as well, and a grotto heaven appeared. The second heavenly king of the Buddhist sects. Boom! 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 A series of deafening sounds echoed. All 8 monks released their grotto heavens and trapped Su Zimo, and the other 2 within. Even a single grotto heaven could suppress perfected immortals and crush heavenly immortals, let alone 8 grotto heavens at the same time. The divine might surged and was unstoppable. Emo Qing could still hold on, but Yunju was poisoned and couldn't hold on. Under the pressure of the 8 grotto heavens, Su Zimo's body was on the verge of collapsing. He could fall to his knees at any time. What do the 8 of you want? Su Zimo gritted his teeth and asked slowly. One of the heavenly kings smiled and said, That's right. As long as you 3 juniors are honest, and tell us everything you know in the Avicii hell, you don't have to suffer. Yunju suddenly asked. Were you the ones who released the information about the Avicii hell? The 8 heavenly kings all lowered their heads and remained silent. Yunju continued. You are nearing the end of your lifespan. That's why you want to obtain the treasures in the Avicii hell to prolong your lives. However, you are too cowardly and cherish your lives too much. You don't dare to enter the Avicii hell personally. He's afraid that he won't be able to come out after going in. That's why you're spreading this news. You're trying to lure all the cultivators to Avicii. As long as someone can leave, and you force them to give you the method, you can do the same, and leave hell, after finding an opportunity in the Avicii hell. A heavenly king suddenly smiled and said, Girl, you're very smart. At this point, there was no need to hide anything. The heavenly king continued. However, we've been waiting nearby for a long time. Over the past few days, there have been about 170,000 cultivators who entered the Avicii hell. However, only the 3 of you were able to leave alive. I believe that something extremely interesting must have happened to the 3 of you. This might involve some secrets of the Avicii hell. Su Zimo surveyed her surroundings and looked at the 8 heavenly kings with a cold gaze. She said in a deep voice, That's why the 8 of you didn't hesitate to kill 170,000 cultivators to extend your lives. Aren't you afraid of karma after cultivating to such an extent? Junior, watch your tone. A heavenly king said coldly. These cultivators entered the Avicii hell because of their greed. What does the karma of these people have to do with us? That's right. Another heavenly king said. If the 8 of us can successfully extend our lives, even if they sacrifice themselves, they will die a worthy death. The Pure Land of Bliss will have 8 more heavenly kings in the future, and can protect more living beings. Hee hee, Su Zimo laughed, her eyes filled with mockery. So in your hearts, the lives of the 8 of you are more valuable than 170,000 living beings. Isn't that so? A heavenly king asked. We're heavenly kings. Even if we're in our twilight years, we're still heavenly kings. What are you guys and those people? In our eyes, you're just ants. Karma? With the karma of ants like you, how much retribution can you cause us? Ridiculous. A heavenly king asked. Tell me, what did the 3 of you experience in the Avicii hell, and how did you leave? If you tell me the truth, you might have a chance to live. Mo Qing's expression was resolute as she shook her head and said, I've already sworn a Tao oath that I won't reveal a single word about the Avicii hell. You don't have to waste your efforts. Su Zimo and Yunju were also silent. Then don't blame us for being rude. A heavenly king pointed at Su Zimo and said coldly, Search his soul first. If you fail, bring the 2 girls back to the Avicii hell. Since the 3 of them can leave alive, it proves that there must be a teleportation method in the Avicii hell. The rest of the heavenly kings had no objections. Su Zimo's question made the heavenly kings feel disgusted. Even if the soul search failed and Su Zimo was crippled, it would not be a loss to them. With all 8 grotto heavens open, Su Zimo was only a stage 3 heavenly immortal. Even with the rank 11 Qinglian's true body, he could not move under the pressure of the 8 heavenly kings. The difference between them was too great. Sigh. At that moment, a sigh came from the side. The 8 heavenly kings frowned and looked towards the source of the sound. Not far away from them, a haggard old monk with long brows stood there. His eyes were turbid as he looked over expressionlessly. The 8 heavenly kings' expressions changed slightly, and their hearts skipped a beat. The old monk looked much older than them, and seemed as though half his body was buried in the ground. But when did this long-browed old monk appear here? None of the 8 of them had noticed. Tombkeeper. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he caught sight of the old monk. Who are you? When did you arrive? A heavenly king asked in a deep voice. The old monk looked like he was only a mystic immortal. However, if he was, there was no way he could have escaped their senses and arrived here silently. The old monk replied indifferently, I've been here the entire time. The pupils of the 8 heavenly kings constricted slightly. If what the old monk said was true, it would be even more terrifying. This meant that they had not discovered the old monk the entire time after arriving here. Chapter 2354. Fellow cultivator, are you also going to Avicii? A heavenly king said in a deep voice. If that's the case, we might as well join forces. The 8 heavenly kings could not see through the tombkeeper's background, so they did not dare to act rashly. One of them took the initiative to rope him in. The tombkeeper sighed softly. You are all about to die. Why struggle? Just find an empty grave beside you and bury yourself. At this moment, the 8 heavenly kings' expressions changed drastically. They did not know when, but there were graves around them. They were densely packed and arranged in a disorderly manner. The Grand Taiwei Mountain and Shura Temple seemed to have disappeared. It was as if they were in an endless cemetery. The surroundings were filled with the aura of death. The atmosphere was gloomy and ghostly flames were everywhere. It was hair-raising. This is an illusion? A formation? The 8 heavenly kings were bewildered. Crack, crack, crack. At this moment, the grotto heavens behind the 8 heavenly kings cracked and began to collapse rapidly. Oh no, this is the power of the world. We have fallen into his world. Only when one stepped into the Emperor realm would the grotto heavens transform into a world of their own. Bo Sun's great devil sky was a world that he had condensed. Although the Emperor realm and the grotto heaven realm were only one realm apart, the gap was unimaginable. Even if there were 100 or 1,000 immortal kings, they would not be able to resist the Emperor realm. When the Emperor realm propped up the world, the grotto heavens of all the immortal kings would shatter and collapse. These were 2 different levels of power. They were like clouds and mud. This person is the Emperor realm, the 8 heavenly kings exclaimed. They did not have time to think and unleashed all their means. Their chi and blood surged. Their natal magic treasures and all kinds of talismans were released at once. In front of the Emperor realm, the 8 heavenly kings did not have the slightest courage to resist. They scattered in all directions. The tombkeeper walked slowly toward one of the heavenly kings and muttered softly, Don't run. I'll collect your body. As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly king's body stiffened, as if he had suffered a huge impact. The vitality in his body rapidly weakened. The heavenly king's head tilted and fell from the sky. The tombkeeper seemed to be moving slowly, but he arrived beside the heavenly king's body. He caught the corpse and threw it into an empty grave. Time to collect the corpse. The tombkeeper turned around, looked at the back of the other heavenly king, and said softly. The heavenly king's body trembled. In the blink of an eye, the aura of death filled his body. He died and fell into the same empty grave. When Su Zimo, Imo Qing and Yunju saw this, their faces were filled with shock. The heavenly king of Buddhism, a powerhouse who stood at the peak of the upper realm, was like an ant in front of this tombkeeper. The tombkeeper didn't even make a move. With just one sentence, a heavenly king had fallen. Who are you? One of the heavenly kings couldn't take it anymore, and had a mental breakdown. He stopped and roared at the tombkeeper. The tombkeeper turned to look at the heavenly king, a faint light in his eyes. Instantly, the heavenly king's eyes glazed over, and he fell powerlessly into the empty grave, dead and gone. With just a glance, the heavenly king died. Su Zimo and the other 2 felt chills run down their spines. What kind of method was this? In the blink of an eye, only 3 of the 8 heavenly kings were left. However, the tomb was boundless and the 8 heavenly kings could not escape, even if they sped with all their might. This was the tombkeeper's world. Look, there's an exit there. A heavenly king pointed to the dark abyss not far away and roared. Not only that, but an unprecedented peerless expert was buried within, the seamless emperor. Could it be that he was guarding the tomb of the Emperor of Eternity? The tombkeeper of the Emperor of Eternity? This guess was too terrifying. It could be said to be earth-shattering. However, Su Zimo rejected this idea. That was impossible. The Emperor of Eternity had fallen many years ago. Even the Emperor of Eternity had passed away long ago. Who could live until now? Su Zimo shook his head slightly, and gradually put down these distracting thoughts. No matter what, this tomb keeper did not seem to have any hostility towards the three of them. Chapter 2355. Yunju said, I have to go back and ask my father about the tomb keeper's identity. Then, I'll go to the library to look through some ancient books and see if there are any records about him. We can't stay here for long. Let's leave first, Suzimo said in a low voice. Although the tomb keeper had disappeared without a trace, the three of them still felt uneasy. The three of them immediately set off, and soon arrived at the nearest teleportation formation. Suzimo looked at Yunju and said, I'll go the same way as senior sister. You can go first. Yunju did not decline and smiled. She cupped her hands and said, I'm very happy to have met the two of you on this trip to hell. I don't know when we'll meet again. After leaving Avicii, Yunju's weakness seemed to have disappeared. Instead, she looked more heroic and carefree. Although the four fairies were famous in the heaven world, they did not have much contact with each other, let alone know each other. Although they had not been in Avicii for long, the two fairies had gone through hardships together. Naturally, they were much closer to each other. Moreover, they could see each other's character through this experience. Emoching was not good with words. She just gently held Yunju's hand, a trace of reluctance in her beautiful eyes. She had not had many friends since she started cultivating. However, after today, Emoching saw Yunju as her only confidant. During this trip to hell, not only did I meet a sister, but I also seemed to have met a. Emoching lowered her head slightly as her mind wandered. We can still meet again, Suzimo said. Let's not talk about other things. At the Divine Firmament Immortal Conference, all the major sects and forces will gather. It's the biggest event in the Divine Firmament Immortal Realm. Emoching's eyes lit up, and she nodded repeatedly. Suzimo looked at Yunju and said with a smile, At that time, your brother and I will fight for the first place on the heaven list. You won't miss it, right? Originally, I didn't plan to watch the fight. Yunju smiled and said meaningfully, But since it's a fight between you and Yenting, I can't miss it. As Yunju spoke, she looked at Suzimo. Her eyes were bright and dazzling. Suzimo was somewhat at a disadvantage. He averted his gaze and coughed softly. If I beat Yenting up, please don't be angry. No, it's good that you can teach him a lesson. Yunju smiled and said, He has a proud personality. If he can suffer some setbacks, it will be a good thing. Emoching added, Originally, I didn't like these events. I always thought there were too many people, and it was too noisy. However, if Big Sister is willing to go, I will also go and take a look. Alright, let's part ways here. We'll catch up another day. Yunju cupped his fists and bade farewell. Then, he turned around and stepped into the teleportation formation, leaving in a carefree manner. Senior sister, let's go, Suzimo said and stepped into the teleportation portal. Emoching nodded and stepped in as well. The two of them activated the transmission array and returned to Cosmos Academy. Avicii Hell. The three heavenly kings of Buddhism fell as if they had fallen into a huge and complicated maze. There were tunnels everywhere. Some passageways led to dead ends, while others led to more passageways. The three heavenly kings were trapped in this place and could not walk out at all. They kept going in circles. That was not the most terrifying thing. What was even more frightening was that there was a kind of strange ant that appeared in this tunnel. It had formed a small group of ants and attacked them. The three heavenly kings joined forces and barely managed to hold on. However, they could not use their essence spirits here and could only rely on their bodies and blood chi. If a few more such ant colonies were to appear, they would not be able to hold on for long. Furthermore, the ants were getting stronger. Initially, the ants that appeared only felt an itch when they bit their bodies. However, in the end, there were already ants that could bite through their flesh. If there were tens or billions of such ants, the three of them would probably be gnawed until only their bones were left in less than 15 minutes. The three heavenly kings scurried around in the maze, but could not find a way out. Before long, the three heavenly kings arrived at the end of a tunnel. The three of them could only turn back. However, the moment they turned, they saw a gigantic ant colony surging towards them like a gigantic black torrent that was unstoppable. With nowhere to retreat, the three heavenly kings roared and channeled their blood chi to fight with all their might. However, the three of them were incomparably tiny against the black torrent. In just a few breaths, their figures were drowned. Hell ants crawled all over their bodies and gnawed on their flesh continuously. In the blink of an eye, the three of them were covered in wounds and blood flowed profusely. The furious roars of the three gradually turned into miserable shrieks. The trio's chi and blood rapidly declined. Even heavenly kings could not defend against the encirclement of so many living beings of hell. Furthermore, the three heavenly kings were already in their twilight years. Just as they were in despair, the black torrent on their bodies retreated rapidly and disappeared. The three of them could only sprawl on the ground, and could not even stand. Many parts of their bodies were gnawed by the hell ants until their bones were revealed. It was a shocking sight. Their internal organs had been bitten full of holes by the hell ants. What's wrong? What happened? The three heavenly kings panted heavily, and tried their best to raise their heads to see what was happening. In their blurry vision, two figures walked over slowly from the other end of the tunnel. The person in the lead wore purple robes, and a silver mask on his face. Like an emissary from the depths of hell, he exuded a sinister aura. It was as though the appearance of that person was the reason why the terrifying ant swarm disappeared. Behind the purple-robed man was a young monk. "Why, you're a disciple of Multiple Rumors Monastery." One of the heavenly kings recognized the young monk's robes, and tried his best to extend his arm while panting. "I'm Multiple Rumors Monastery's heavenly king Bukong. Save me." As a heavenly king of Multiple Rumors Monastery, he naturally could not recognize an ordinary disciple like the young monk. However, he believed that any disciple of Multiple Rumors Monastery would definitely recognize him. The young monk lowered his head in silence. "Fellow Taoists, please save us." The other heavenly king struggled and crawled slowly, wanting to approach the purple-robed man. Suddenly the purple-robed man spoke. "I've asked before, aren't you afraid of karma after cultivating to this extent?" The three heavenly kings were stunned. That sentence did sound familiar, as though they had heard it somewhere not long ago. However, the three of them were battered from the attack of the hell ants, and were in unbearable pain. Their minds were in a mess, and they could not recall anything for a moment. "That's good as well. I'll let you guys die with understanding." As the purple-robed man spoke, he reached out and removed the mask on his face, revealing a handsome face. "It's you." The three heavenly kings' pupils constricted as though they had seen a ghost. At that moment, the fear that the purple-robed man brought to them was even greater than the ant swarm in hell. Wu Dao's true body put on the silver mask once more and turned to leave, saying indifferently, "Karma is a cycle. What goes around comes around." Under the gazes of the three heavenly kings, Wu Dao's true body gradually disappeared at the end of the tunnel. Before long, their visions were filled by the black torrent once more. Chapter 2356. Qianquan Academy. In a secret chamber on the top floor of the secret pavilion, the fragrance of herbs filled the air. Elder Xian sat cross-legged on the couch, his eyes closed as he recuperated. He looked pale and his aura was weak. Suddenly, another person appeared in the secret chamber. It was the Academy Patriarch. "How do you feel after resting for a few days?" the Academy Patriarch asked. "I won't die." Elder Xian didn't open his eyes and said casually. Then he asked, "Any news about Su Zimo? He should have entered hell, but we don't know if he's dead or alive." The Academy Patriarch said. "Have any living beings emerged from the Avicii hell over the past few days?" Elder Xian asked. "No." The Academy Patriarch shook his head slightly. "You don't seem worried?" Elder Xian didn't open his eyes, but he seemed to be able to sense the Academy Patriarch's thoughts. "There's no point in worrying," the Academy Patriarch said. "Moreover, I just divined Su Zimo's fortune. His divination has turned misfortune into fortune." "That's good." Elder Xian nodded. The secret chamber became quiet again. After a while, Elder Xian suddenly asked, "Have you found out anything about that long-browed old monk?" "I'm not sure. I can't divine anything. The Academy Patriarch shook his head. It's normal that you can't divine someone who can see through my paradise. Elder Xian didn't ask any more questions after that, and continued recuperating. After a while, the Academy Patriarch saw that Elder Xian didn't speak, and turned to leave. A ripple appeared in void space, and the Academy Patriarch disappeared. Elder Xian slowly opened his eyes at this moment. He looked expressionlessly in the direction where the Academy Patriarch had disappeared. He looked for a while, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a long while, Elder Xian took a deep breath and closed his eyes to continue recuperating. Academy Inner Sect Qingyan Cave Abode. Fang Qingyan sat in the middle and gently rubbed his forehead. No one knew what he was thinking. Senior Fang, is there something on your mind? Not far away, an inner sect disciple of the academy asked. He was a rank 6 heavenly immortal called Chang Qi, and was usually very close to Fang Qingyan. Fang Qingyan indeed had something on his mind. This matter made him rather irritable. A few days ago, he received a message from Commandery Prince Yuanzhua that the 4 forces had been completely annihilated. Even Tang Peng had died on the Grand Taiwei Mountain. Su Zimo fled into the Avicii Hell, and the others chased after him. Since there had been no news from him for the past few days, he was most likely dead. Moreover, as time passed, the various forces in the heaven realm gradually realized that none of the cultivators who entered the Avicii Hell could come out alive. Many experts gradually realized that the Avicii Hell might be a trap. Subsequently, they forbade their disciples from exploring it. If Su Zimo had escaped into the Avicii Hell, he would have died. But the price this time was too great. Tang Peng had followed him in the inner sect for many years. Who would have thought that he would die outside this time? While feeling sad, Fang Qingyan also rejoiced in his heart. Initially, he thought that with the 4 major forces joining hands to deal with a level 2 heavenly immortal, it would be absolutely foolproof. That was why he did not follow them. Who would have thought that a momentary lapse in judgment would save his life? However, it was not appropriate for Fang Qingyan to tell others about this. Tang Peng had joined forces with outsiders to deal with a fellow disciple of the same sect. He could not blame anyone for his death. If news of this spread to the ears of the elders, he might even be implicated. How's Yang Ruoxu? He's not dead yet, Fang Qingyan asked with a frown. Since Su Zimo was already dead, there was no use keeping Yang Ruoxu alive. Yang Ruoxu knew that he had joined forces with outsiders. Yang Ruoxu's survival was ultimately a hidden danger. Chang Qi said. During this period of time we haven't found any suitable opportunities. Lu Ping and the Scarlet Rainbow Princess have been guarding Yang Ruoxu's cave abode the entire time. Even if someone leaves to collect some sect resources, there will be one person left behind. Both of them are inner sect disciples. It's not appropriate for us to barge in. Humph, Fang Qingyan said. Can't you create an opportunity if there's no opportunity? If I remember correctly, you should be cultivating the Academy's Overwhelming Righteousness Sutra, right? That's right. Chang Qi nodded. Seeing that Chang Qi still did not understand, Fang Qingyan could not help but frown. Yang Ruoxu is now a cripple. The Overwhelming Righteousness sword is still with him. It's equivalent to a pearl covered in dust. Go and get it back. Understood. Chang Qi's eyes lit up. I'll go right away. At the teleportation formation of Qingquan Academy, 2 rays of light suddenly flickered. Immediately after, the figures of a man and a woman appeared on the teleportation formation. It was Su Zimo and Fairy Emo Qing, who had returned from the Pure Lands. Where are you going? Emo Qing turned to look at Su Zimo. Su Zimo pondered and said, I'm going to make a trip to senior brother Yang Ruoxu's place. I have to send the fretless fruit over as soon as possible. What's wrong with him? Emo Qing asked. Su Zimo was a little surprised and asked, Senior sister, you don't know about this? Emo Qing shook her head slightly. Su Zimo thought about it. Senior sister Emo Qing was in seclusion to paint all year round in the academy, and was indifferent to the academy's matters. It was normal that she did not know about Yang Ruoxu's situation. If that was the case, one thing could be confirmed. There was indeed nothing between Emo Qing and Yang Ruoxu. Otherwise, Mo Qing would not have known about Yang Ruox's serious injuries. Senior brother Yang was surrounded and severely injured. His essence soul was damaged. Only the fretless fruit can heal him. Su Zimo said, I'm going to Avicii this time to look for the fretless fruit. Oh. Mo Qing replied casually, as if she did not care about this matter. She nodded and said, Then go quickly. Where's senior sister? Su Zimo asked. Mo Qing said, I've returned to my cave abode. After pausing for a moment, Mo Qing thought for a moment and said, If you encounter anything in the future, or have something you don't understand, you can come to the place of inheritance to find me. Ah. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. These words did not seem to come from senior sister Mo Qing's mouth. With senior sister Mo Qing's personality, why would she take the initiative to invite others to her cave abode? Even the Moonlight Sword Immortal did not receive such treatment. Just as Su Zimo was puzzled, Fairy Mo Qing had already turned and left. Fairy Mo Qing flew through the air, shuttling through the clouds. The snow butterfly danced beside her. The woman and the butterfly seemed to have merged into one with the surrounding nature. Junior brother Su is my junior brother after all. We went through this together. We should take care of each other in the future. Fairy Mo Qing said in a low voice. Moreover, junior brother Su and that fellow Taoist is very close. Thinking of that person, Fairy Mo Qing suddenly thought of something and said with some blame, Little butterfly, when that fellow Taoist Araki Takashi appeared, why did you fly around him and cause trouble? Normally, you wouldn't do this. It's so strange. The butterfly said crisply. I also felt the aura of my clan's demon emperor on that person. Could it be that I was wrong? The butterfly's confused voice sounded. Chapter 2357. The surroundings of Yang Ruox's cave abode were still dilapidated and overgrown with weeds, as though it had been abandoned for a long time. Su Zimo stepped forward and knocked on the door gently, closed the door and refused to see anyone. Before long, a slightly childish voice sounded from within. It sounded furious. Go away, go away. It's me, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. There was a moment of silence in the cave abode, before the sound of fluttering clothes could be heard. The door of the cave abode opened, and a child's face was revealed. It was Lu Ping. Senior brother Su. Lu Ping's eyes lit up as he shouted. Su Zimo nodded with a smile. As he walked in he asked, How is senior brother Yang? At the mention of Yang Ruoxu, Lu Ping's face sank again. Senior brother Yang's essence spirit is getting weaker, and he has been unconscious for 3 days. I don't think he can hold on for much longer. After that, Lu Ping blinked and said, If not for senior sister Qi Hong's meticulous care, senior brother Yang might have died long ago. There seemed to be a hidden meaning in Lu Ping's words. However, Su Zimo was concerned about Yang Ruoxu, and did not think too much about it. Soon, the two of them arrived before Yang Ruox's bed. Princess Qi Hong and a boy were guarding before it. Princess Qi Hong held Yang Ruox's hand with a worried expression. At the sight of Su Zimo's return, Princess Qi Rainbow merely forced a smile and nodded. Yang Ruox's face was pale, and he was unconscious. His life aura was weak. Without hesitation, Su Zimo took out the fretless fruit from his storage bag and walked to Yang Ruox's bed. He placed the fretless fruit beside Yang Ruox's mouth and scratched it gently with his fingernail. A crack appeared on the fretless fruit, and the rich juice with a unique fragrance flowed into Yang Ruox's mouth slowly. This is Princess Qi Hong, Lu Ping, and the other two revealed strange expressions. Although the three of them knew that Su Zimo had headed to Avicii to search for the fretless fruit, they did not have much hope in their hearts. This is the fretless fruit. Su Zimo frowned as he looked at Yang Ruox's face. The fretless fruit had been given to Yang Ruoxu, but her condition showed no signs of improvement. Actually, Su Zimo did not know much about the fretless fruit. It was said that the fretless fruit could heal severely injured primordial spirits. However, this worryless fruit had been buried in the Avicii hell for so many years after all. No one knew if it still had the effect of healing the essence spirit. What's going on? Even the fretless fruit won't work? Princess Qi Hong's voice was trembling as she was too concerned. Su Zimo spread out his soul and carefully inspected Yang Ruox's body. He said after some thought, "Senior brother Yang's soul has been injured for too long, and his body has been heavily injured as well. Even if he eats the fretless fruit, his body will not be able to refine and absorb the energy within the fretless fruit. We can infuse the yuan qi of heaven and earth into his body and help him absorb it." Princess Chi Hong reacted extremely quickly as she immediately thought of this method. Su Zimo nodded. Princess Chi Hong circulated the yuan qi of heaven and earth and carefully infused it into Yang Ruox's body. However, Yang Ruox's condition did not show any signs of improvement even after a long while. "Well, what should we do?" Princess Chi Hong was at a loss. "Let me give it a try." Su Zimo extended his finger and gently touched Yang Ruox's glabella. He slowly infused a stream of pure and rich yuan qi into Yang Ruox's body. Before long, Yang Ruox's face regained some color. The vitality in his body also gradually stabilized and no longer deteriorated. "It's effective." Princess Chi Hong was delighted. When Su Zimo saw Yang Ruox's breathing gradually become stable and strong, he felt slightly relieved and heaved a sigh of relief. He was Qinglian's true body. The yuan qi in his body was much purer and more condensed than Princess Chi Hong's. Furthermore, Qinglian was a god of the plant race. Naturally, she could easily absorb and refine the fretless fruit. Although Yang Ruox's condition had stabilized, there were still no signs of him waking up. Su Zimo did not stop as he continued infusing yuan qi of heaven and earth to help Yang Ruoxu absorb the fretless fruit. Thud, thud, thud. Right then, a series of violent knocks sounded from outside the cave abode. To be precise, it did not sound like someone was knocking on the door. Instead, it sounded like someone was slamming the door. Because of the huge impact outside, the entire cave was trembling slightly, and a lot of dust fell from the top of his head. "It must be that group of people again," the boy said hatefully. "Fang Qingyan?" Su Zimo asked with a frown. Lu Ping said, "Fang Qingyan has never shown himself. However, those who came to cause trouble during this period of time were almost all his followers. These people always find all sorts of excuses to visit senior brother Yang. In fact, they have ill intentions." Thud, thud, thud. The knocks sounded once more and more violently. Su Zimo was still helping Yang Ruoxu refine the fretless fruit and could not leave for the time being. Lu Ping stood up and said, "I'll chase them away." Lu Ping and Yang Ruox's boy headed outside. "Go away. Young master is rejecting all visitors." The boy shouted, "Is this how senior brother Yang treats his fellow disciples? If you don't open the door, don't blame me for destroying this cave abode." A voice sounded in the cave abode. "Changqi, how dare you barge into a fellow disciple's cave abode without senior brother Yang's permission?" Lu Ping hollered when he recognized the voice. "Fufu," Changqi chuckled. "We're here to visit senior brother Yang, because he's severely injured. However, you guys refuse to see him. Right now, I suspect that you guys have already killed him. For the sake of senior brother Yang's safety, the sect won't pursue any responsibility even if I barge into the cave abode." "You." The boy was exasperated. Lu Ping said in a deep voice, "Will definitely not open the cave abode. You guys can go back." "Don't blame me for being impolite then," Changqi said coldly. Immediately after, a tremendous force slammed against the door of the cave abode. Boom! With a deafening sound, the door of the cave abode shattered into pieces and scattered on the ground, stirring up endless dust. Changqi led a few inner sect disciples and more than 100 odd job workers of the academy. All of them barged in with unfriendly expressions. "How dare you?" Lu Ping was shocked and furious as he clenched his fists and glared. "You're not allowed to go over." The boy extended his arms and stopped Changqi and the others as well. "Since you guys are so nervous, it seems like Yang Ruoxu isn't dead yet." Changqi raised his brows slightly and said leisurely, "However, even if he's not dead, he's a cripple. It's fine if you don't let me in, as long as you hand over Yang Ruox's Howren sword to me." "Why should I?" the boy questioned loudly. "Yang Ruoxu is already a cripple, and he's not fit to wield the Howren sword," Changqi declared proudly. I cultivate the Howran Morality Sutra as well. In the academy, I'm the only one who's fit to wield the Howran sword." The boy scoffed in disdain. Changqi narrowed his gaze and said coldly, "Slap him. Brat, how dare you mock the disciples of the academy?" Immediately, more than 10 odd job workers stood out and scolded. They swarmed forward and restrained the boy, slapping his face a few times. Instantly the boy's cheeks swelled. However, he did not give in and merely glared at Changqi fiercely. Just as Lu Ping was about to make a move, Changqi released a massive suppression of his spirit consciousness and froze Lu Ping on the spot. Lu Ping was only a rank 1 heavenly immortal, while Changqi was a rank 6 heavenly immortal. The difference between the two of them was too great, and Lu Ping could not defend at all. "Let's go." Changqi waved and prepared to barge in with his men. Suddenly, a voice sounded from within the cave abode. "How dare you wield the Howran sword?" A green-robed cultivator walked out of the cave abode. Chapter 2358. Su Zemo? When Changqi saw who it was, his expression changed into one of disbelief. "What's going on? Isn't he dead?" Several inner sect disciples next to Changqi were bewildered as they whispered to each other. Su Zemo helped Yang Ruoxu dissolve the power of the fretless fruit completely. When he saw that Yang Ruoxu could circulate and regulate his breathing, and his essence spirit was healing, he walked over and bumped into Changqi and the others who barged into the cave abode. Su Zemo released a massive spirit consciousness suppression that surged over like a tidal wave. Boom! Changqi shuddered. Su Zemo's essence spirit was already at the peak of a rank 5 heavenly immortal. Coupled with Qinglian's powerful essence spirit, the strength of his spirit consciousness was definitely not weaker than Changqi's. The pressure on Lu Ping disappeared without a trace, and he regained his freedom. Su Zemo's gaze landed on the boy's face, and his expression turned cold as he waved his sleeves casually. The dozens of servant immortals shuddered as though they were struck by lightning and were sent flying instantly. Spitting out blood, they slammed into the walls of the cave abode and rolled down in a wretched manner. The boy was still standing on the spot unharmed. "Junior brother Su, what's the meaning of this?" Changqi's expression darkened as he asked slowly. "Senior brother Chang. He's now an in-name disciple of the patriarch. We should address him as senior brother Su." An inner sect disciple behind Changqi reminded softly. Taking a deep breath, Changqi had no choice but to change the way he addressed Su Zemo and said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Su, you have to look at the owner before you hit a dog. You hurt my men without any reason. You have to give me an explanation. Look at the owner before I hit a dog." Su Zemo arrived before Changqi. Without any warning, he raised his hand and slapped Changqi heavily on the face. Piak! That slap caused Changqi to stagger, and his cheekbones were almost shattered. "I'll hit the owner of the dog too." Su Zemo looked at Changqi expressionlessly. His eyes were cold as if he was driving away a servant. He spat out a word, "Get lost." Lu Ping and the boy almost clapped their hands and cheered. They felt that all the grievances they had suffered in the past few days seemed to have found a way to vent. Changqi was stunned for a moment. He never thought that Su Zemo would dare to attack him in the inner gate of the academy. "You!" Changqi quickly reacted and flew into a rage. The fact that he was humiliated by Su Zemo in front of a few inner sect disciples and many other servant and miscellaneous laborers made him feel a rush of blood to his head. He glared at Su Zemo with bloodshot eyes and was about to rush forward to fight. "Senior brother Chang, don't be rash." Two inner disciples hurried forward and grabbed Changqi's arm. "What are you doing?" Changqi hollered. "Su Zemo attacked a fellow disciple in the academy and has already violated the sect rules. Don't blame me for being impolite. If we're talking about the sect rules, you were the one who barged into senior brother Yang's cave abode first. Even if I cripple you right now, the elders of the sect won't punish me." Su Zemo said coldly with a sinister tone. Changqi could not help but shudder under Su Zemo's gaze. At that moment, Changqi was overwhelmed by Su Zemo's aura. Even though he was a rank 6 heavenly immortal, he felt a little weak and the blood in his body gradually cooled down. 1,000 years ago, The person before him condensed the 10th step of the Tao Heart Ladder. Not only did the 9 elders of the academy alarm, even the patriarch of the academy appeared. There was even a legacy disciple who was completely crippled because of this person. Compared to that legacy disciple, his rank 6 heavenly immortal cultivation was truly nothing. The identity of the patriarch's nominal disciple was there. Even if this person's cultivation was not high, in the inner sect, who would dare to confront him head-on? However, being slapped by Su Zimo in front of everyone was too shameful. Changqi was still somewhat unwilling in his heart. Changqi took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Su, I respect you as a senior brother of the academy, and will not fight with you. But everything has to be reasonable. Yang Ruoxu is already a cripple. Why did he keep the Haoran sword and not hand it over?" Su Zimo sneered slightly and said, "Only a magnanimous and upright person deserves to wield the Haoran sword. Ask yourself, do you deserve these words?" Changqi's heart and mind shook. Su Zimo's words were extremely powerful. Like a divine weapon, it directly pointed at the Taoist heart. Changqi's face was gloomy and uncertain, and he wanted to retreat. At this moment, in the distant sky, many disciples of the academy rushed over. They were densely packed, and it seemed that there were at least 10,000 of them. The person in the lead was Fang Qingyan. When the people of the academy at the teleportation formation passed the news of Su Zimo's return to Fang Qingyan, he realized that something was amiss and gathered many inner sect disciples, rushing over in a grandiose manner. There were more than 100,000 inner sect disciples. Fang Qingyan had been in the inner sect for many years, and was the number 1 of the inner sect. With a deep reputation, it was easy for him to gather more than 10,000 inner sect disciples with a single call. "Senior brother Su, how have you been?" Fang Qingyan smiled and cupped his fists slightly. Although he was smiling, there were more than 10,000 inner sect disciples behind him with a menacing aura. They had come with ill intentions. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent, and he did not return the greeting. "What's going on?" Fang Qingyan asked with a frown. Changqi hurriedly recounted everything that happened just now. After hearing it, Fang Qingyan looked at Su Zimo and said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Su, you're in the wrong. Junior brother Yang's cultivation is already crippled, and it's indeed unsuitable for him to wield the Haoran sword, causing the treasure sword of the academy to be covered in dust. Even if Changqi isn't qualified to wield the Haoran sword, senior brother Yang should still hand it over and return it to the sect for other fated people." Every single sentence of Fang Qingyan seemed fair, and stood from the perspective of the academy. However, he was still targeting Yang Ruoxu. "Senior brother Fang is right. Senior brother Yang is about to die. What's the point of holding on to the treasure sword? Senior brother Yang is too selfish. That sword should indeed be returned to the sect. Hand over the Haoran sword." The inner sect disciples behind Fang Qingyan spoke one after another, setting off a series of voices that formed an unstoppable momentum. Fang Qingyan had a faint smile on his face the entire time. He knew very well that Su Zimo was the in-name disciple of the patriarch, and surpassed him in terms of status. Therefore, this matter had to be blown up. It had to even reach the upper echelons of the academy, and the inheritance ground, so that he could use the power of the upper echelons of the academy to pressure Su Zimo. Because of this matter, even if the elders of the academy appeared, they would not be able to say anything. Yang Ruoxu was a cripple, and was indeed unsuitable to wield the Haoran sword. That was an indisputable fact. Su Zimo was the in-name disciple of the patriarch, but he could not stop the trend of the times. Facing the torrential sound wave, Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he looked at Fang Qingyan with a hint of mockery. Fang Qingyan noticed Su Zimo's gaze, and a hint of uneasiness flashed through his heart. Could there be something that I didn't calculate? There shouldn't be. Fang Qingyan carefully thought it over again, but he didn't find any flaws. The Haoran sword is in my hands. Whoever wants it, come and get it. Right then, a voice came from the cave that was full of vigor. Accompanying this voice was a man and a woman who walked out side by side. The woman was the Scarlet Rainbow Princess while the man was Yang Ruoxu. The current young Wuxia did not have the slightest bit of a severely injured and dying state. Instead, his aura was torrential and his body was surrounded by a righteous aura. Holding the Haoran sword in his hand, his gaze was like lightning as he surveyed the surroundings. Many disciples were no match for him, and no one dared to look him in the eye. Chapter 2359. Young Wuxia had cultivated the great righteousness scripture, so he had always been open and aboveboard in his actions. He was magnanimous, and he had a chivalrous heart, and was full of righteousness. As for Fang Qingyun's group, although they spoke of benevolence and morality in the name of the academy, they were actually scheming against each other, with ulterior motives. Now that young Wuxia had come out of seclusion with his injuries healed, and was even stronger than before, who would dare to take the Haoran sword in his hands? Who was qualified to take the Haoran sword? The overwhelming righteousness sutra had been passed down for a long time. However, there were not many people who cultivated it since ancient times, and there were even fewer cultivators who could cultivate it to greater mastery. In this generation's academy, young Wuxia was the only one who had successfully cultivated the overwhelming righteousness sutra. Although Changqi claimed to have cultivated this sutra, he only scratched the surface and could not unleash the true power of this sutra. As an immortal cultivator, who could guarantee that they had not done anything shameful? Who could guarantee that they had not done anything wrong? Who could guarantee that their actions were open and aboveboard? Even in the entire academy, including the many elders, only young Wuxia was qualified to wield the Haoran sword, let alone the inner sect of the academy. Fang Qingyun had not expected that young Wuxia would recover from his injuries and return to his peak. All his schemes collapsed the moment young Wuxia came out of seclusion. Even though there were more than 10,000 people, they were like scattered sand. Although Fang Qingyun was an inner sect disciple, he was no match for young Wuxia, who was wielding the Haoran sword at that moment. So, junior brother Yang has recovered from his injuries. Congratulations. Fang Qingyun reacted quickly and did not intend to fight young Wuxia head-on. Instead, he took a step back and congratulated with cupped fists. Young Wuxia glanced at Fang Qingyun coldly and did not reply. He then looked up at the sky with a solemn expression. It was initially noon, and the sun was high in the sky. However, at that moment, a large patch of dark clouds gathered above the academy, and the sky gradually darkened. This is... Fang Qingyun and the others were shocked when they sensed this scene. He's going to transcend the tribulation. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. That voice was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, and the crowd exploded instantly. Young Wuxia actually profited from such a calamity, and took the most crucial step to step into the true self realm. How could it be that easy? Since ancient times, there have been many people who underwent the tribulation, but only 30% of them were able to survive the 69 heavenly tribulations, condense their Tao fruits, step into the true One realm, and become a true immortal. No matter what, young Wuxia has made it this far. Most people don't even have the chance to pass the tribulation. Who would have thought that senior brother Yang would be the first to undergo tribulation among the hundreds of thousands of inner sect disciples? If he succeeds in transcending the tribulation, senior apprentice brother Fang will be left behind. Listening to the discussions around him, Fang Qingyun's face was gloomy. His eyes were filled with shock and jealousy. However, the strange phenomenon in the sky had attracted everyone's attention, so no one paid any attention to him. Young Wuxia's figure slowly rose into the air, attracting the attention of the crowd. Translator, Transin editor, Transin in front of Mo Qing's cave abode. A man stood with his hands behind his back. He was tall and straight, with sharp brows and bright eyes. He was the Moonlight Sword deity. Not far away, Fairy Mo Qing flew over. The Moonlight Sword deity hurriedly went up to her with a smile. Junior sister, I've been worried about you these past few days. If you didn't come back, I was prepared to leave and go to the Avicii Hell to explore. Thank you for your concern, senior apprentice brother. Mo Qing nodded with an indifferent expression. Although her words were polite, the two of them seemed to be thousands of miles apart. They seemed to be even more distant than before. The Moonlight Sword deity's expression stiffened, but she quickly recovered her smile and asked, "Junior sister, did you find what you were looking for in this trip to hell?" Mo Qing answered absent-mindedly. The Moonlight Sword deity's expression changed. She frowned and asked, "Junior sister, did you get the fretless fruit?" "I didn't get the fretless fruit." Mo Qing was a little surprised and confused. She shook her head slightly, not understanding why the Moonlight Sword deity would make such a guess. This was indeed the truth. The fretless fruit had been taken away by Su Zimo. The Moonlight Sword deity heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed. She chuckled and said, "I was thinking too much. Senior apprentice brother, if there's nothing else, I'll go back and rest first." Mo Qing said lightly. She was already sending him off with this sentence. The Moonlight Sword deity naturally understood, but he did not leave. Instead, he took the initiative to invite her. "Junior sister, junior apprentice brother Yang of the inner sect is seriously injured and can't hold on for long. Let's go and take a look." Junior apprentice brother Yang. Mo Qing was a little confused and did not react for a moment. "Keep pretending. I'd like to see how long you can pretend." The Moonlight Sword deity sneered in her heart, but she smiled and said, "It's junior apprentice brother Yang Ruoxu." Mo Qing frowned and shook her head. "Senior apprentice brother, you can go." "I won't go." In her opinion, she and Yang Ruoxu were just ordinary fellow disciples, and were not familiar with each other. There was no need for her to go. Moreover, junior apprentice brother Su had already sent the fretless fruit over. Yang Ruoxu should not be in any danger. The Moonlight Sword deity originally wanted to go with Fairy Mo Qing and watch Yang Ruoxu's final struggle. Unexpectedly, Mo Qing was not interested at all. The Moonlight Sword deity saw that Mo Qing did not seem to care about Yang Ruoxu's safety at all. Her expression did not seem fake, and a trace of confusion arose in his heart. What's going on? What's the problem? As the Moonlight Sword deity pondered, she sensed something and looked in the direction of the Academy's inner sect. She saw that there were dark clouds, surging pressure, and flashing lightning. Someone in the Academy's inner sect was undergoing tribulation. Perhaps it's Fang Qinyan. The Moonlight Sword deity thought to himself. She turned to Fairy Mo Qing and invited, "Junior apprentice sister, someone in the inner sect is undergoing tribulation. Why don't we go and watch?" "I'm not going." Fairy Mo Qing shook her head slightly and thought, "What's there to watch about a tribulation?" Moreover, she did not like to join in the fun. The tribulation would definitely attract countless people, so she was even more unwilling to show up. Fairy Mo Qing did not say goodbye and turned to walk towards the cave abode, leaving the Moonlight Sword deity with her back. The Moonlight Sword deity's repeated invitations were all rejected. She felt disappointed, and her smile gradually disappeared. At this moment, a stream of light sped over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of the Moonlight Sword deity. It was the Academy's core disciple Shaoli. "Senior apprentice brother," Shaoli shouted from afar. "What's the matter?" The Moonlight Sword deity frowned and asked. "No." Shaoli saw that the Moonlight Sword deity seemed a little irritated and hesitated. The Moonlight Sword deity looked in the direction of the Academy's inner sect and asked casually, "Who in the inner sect is undergoing tribulation? Is it Fang Qingyan?" "No." Shaoli shook his head and said hesitantly, "It's Yang Ruoxu." The Moonlight Sword deity's expression changed, and a sharp aura suddenly erupted from her body. She stared coldly at Shaoli and asked slowly, "Who is it?" "Yang Ruoxu." Shaoli swallowed his saliva. His essence spirit was so severely injured, but he was still able to undergo tribulation? The Moonlight Sword deity's tone suddenly became extremely sharp. Shaoli said, "I heard that it was because of the fretless fruit that his essence spirit recovered." "Fretless fruit?" The Moonlight Sword deity's expression darkened and she asked, "Where did the fretless fruit come from?" Shaoli said, "It's Su Zimo from the inner sect. He was the one who condensed the 10th step of the Tao Heart Ladder 1,000 years ago, and was accepted as an unnamed disciple by the Patriarch. He went to hell and obtained it." "It's him." The Moonlight Sword deity's eyes gradually narrowed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.